Hi everyone, and welcome to this little impromptu roundtable special. This is kind of a make-up for Will and I not doing a WTF show last Friday because of me whacking my head on a steel pole, which I think everyone knows about now. Hi and welcome to you all, and welcome to our guest, the ever-lovely Kitty the Atheist. Hi, Kitty. You're still muted, by the way, Kitty.
Yeah, no, I was just doing that. I wanted to make sure I had the stream up on my itty-bitty little monitor, second monitor over here, so I had to move the mouse back over. I'm still getting used to two monitors.
Cool.
Hi.
And the lovely Sam Chaos. Hi, Sam.
Hello. Hello there.
And everybody's favorite organizer and group keep together, Purple Rhymes with Orange.
Absolutely.
Hello.
You are a linchpin of the community, Purple.
I don't know how that happened.
You really are.
I'm truly baffled because I don't have the social skills to do anything like that.
And yet you do it. You somehow managed to do it.
And you weirdly bring us all together.
You do.
Well, I'm glad I'm doing something useful.
And last but not least, we've got the almost a Dr. Matt, who, as anyone who watches my channel who's seen Matt in the past, or watched Nevadia's channel and seen Matt, knows Matt's the resident laser expert.
Lasers are always awesome.
Lasers are always awesome.
That makes my destructive black little heart pitter-patter with delight. I'm not gonna lie.
Now I know this isn't Stump Gen, but now that you're on a stream, have you seen the new article about the new science to do with making lasers even more coherent than they have been? Because there's been limitations within quantum mechanics that restricts how coherent a light you can actually have with a laser.
Oh, this sounds interesting.
And Matt should know this.
I haven't seen the article. So...
He hasn't seen the article. Okay, I was actually browsing through it this morning and fell asleep again whilst I was reading it. Unfortunately, I was really tired. To be fair,
my current work with lasers. Oh, sorry.
We've got the panel for a Stump Gen, haven't we?
Yeah, we have actually. What they're talking about is that there was this group, and I can't even remember what university they're from, but they've been doing studies with it, and they've figured out that there's a way to make the light even more coherent, so you can narrow down the range of light that's emitted by the laser to even a finer range of frequencies. Which will have applications, especially for medical use. So,
I was actually thinking for space, because there's a theoretical design for a propulsion system that's more or less a sailboat that would require a laser in orbit pushing it.
In all honesty, a laser light sail is probably more effective with a big microwave transmitter, which are actually easier for us to make coherent than it is a visible light spectrum laser. Unless I'm wrong, and Matt's going to correct me in a second.
No, that's correct. Normally, the thing with lasers, the longer the wavelength, so the further towards the radio waves you go, easier it is to make, and the less energy it takes to produce a laser beam of X intensity. Which is why X-ray lasers and gamma ray lasers are so difficult to make.
Which is one aspect of making the laser light more coherent. You get less wastage if you're trying to make it in a specific band for medical purposes, like for if you want an X-ray laser. So that you can pinpoint areas where you actually want to send. Is that a hi, Randolph?
Hey, Randolph.
Hey,
Randolph.
I'll be right now. I have to switch off wireless here. Hello.
Alrighty, so.
Okay. You know, the one thing we're missing is the cool jumpsuit that we're going to be wearing in space. That's what I'm. That's the one thing I'm waiting for.
I remember watching Non-Girl of the 21st Century and digging the fashion, and so I will design some badass futuristic outfits.
Exactly.
Okay, I was going to ask why was he waiting instead of designing it, so if you're going to take that on.
We could totally collab.
Exactly. Jumpsuits are awesome.
Yes. And they've got to have like some hollow to them.
Absolutely.
Oh,
Absolutely.
definitely.
That sounds rather fun.
Hello, everyone.
How are
Hi,
you?
Randolph.
Great. How are all you? How's everybody?
Good, good. Alright, so I'm gonna shift people around on the display so that I can actually get
Dog
Randolph
says, what
on the
about your
screen.
space lasers?
I'm gonna have to duck out for a second. Just give me a minute.
no worries.
Oh, we're not live yet, are we?
No, we are. When
Yeah,
I
we're
heard,
live.
when I
Yeah,
heard
we're
about
live.
when I heard about the Jewish space lasers from the Senate,
Hello?
was she a senator from Georgia? Yeah, I can hear you, Matt.
She's a House representative.
I thought that was a joke until I
No.
Space
saw it.
lasers?
Yeah.
Marjorie Green, yeah,
He
that
is
woman
totally
is
into all the
certifiable.
QAnon bullshit.
I thought
That
this was,
shit.
Space lasers.
Absolute crazy.
and she said they were.
If they're space lasers, why does it matter whether they're Jewish?
That was my
Is that like
question,
rocks
is how
being
did the
atheists,
Jews
is it,
come into this?
Randolph? Lasers are Jewish and rocks are atheists.
Well, no, it's because you got to split the anti-Semitism in
You've
there.
made my night,
Like,
Jeremy.
honestly.
No,
Like,
I
that's
agree.
why. It's literally just anti-Semitism.
Absolutely.
Like
Yeah.
the QAnon
Clearly.
and the like, they just coat themselves in an armor of bigotry.
I just thought that was crazy, and she really said that. And Jewish space lasers just sounds awesome. That
Jewish-
might be my
It does.
next.
Can we make a death metal band
I was
and,
about
and
to-
give them that name, please?
It does sound like it, doesn't it?
We should start a punk band. Jewish space lasers.
Well, what I got was apparently she thinks the laser was to clear a path for like some new high-speed rail system, and that this is being built by some Jewish family.
Yes, even though it. Oh no! It gets crazier. The governor of California is in on it, and he needed to clear the way for the high-speed rail that started in the works 10 years ago before he was
Okay.
even governor. So he had the foresight and the future knowledge because Illuminati and
So,
fucking
A-
space Jews and
Exactly.
that makes
That's
perfect
another
fucking
patch.
sense.
Space Jew. I'm so making that.
Okay.
So hold on. Before I want to go off really quick, the railroad has been a failure for the past 15 years. They've been trying to get a railroad from basically Eureka all the way down past San Diego, and it's a failure. So whenever they're trying to incorporate, California's broke. We didn't have the money to finish it.
Yeah.
So that's insane that someone would bring up our failed rail system.
Crazy that they're broke considering they've got the largest economy in the country and the 6th largest economy in the world. But
Then
Yeah.
people should be scared.
Alright, I
Well,
want to go back
actually-
to what you're saying about clearing a path with lasers.
The reason it's failed is because it's not Canadian made.
What did I miss?
Just the science of that, though. Vaporizing rock with a laser requires a shit ton of power, a lot more than it
Yeah.
would take to have tractors go in there and clear the land.
Yeah, but lasers are not a good weapon. You don't use lasers as a weapon. They're for aiming and maybe heating at a very particular point, but no, don't use lasers as a weapon. They're not effective.
I'm still mad at Akira. When I was a kid, Akira told me that we would have space lasers by now, with backpacks and everything.
no, but apparently Marjorie Green thinks that there are Jews in space with frickin' laser beams on their heads.
I mean, even Star Trek doesn't technically use lasers.
Wait,
they use
sharks.
They use phase weapons, which are basically a
Maybe the
plasma
sharks are
plasma
Jewish.
guns.
Space sharks, Jewish space sharks
You
with
just
laser
another
beams.
punk band. It's another laser beam Jewish punk. See,
The-
I can't even say it twice.
The coolest thing though I've seen with lasers though, as far as weaponry goes, is technically if you you can heat up air with lasers. So if you have two laser beams side by side, you can actually heat up the air in between if they're close enough together to being almost a plasma, and then you can fire an electrical charge down the plasma line because the plasma is a better conductor than the air around it. So you can actually make a technically you could make a laser guided taser.
Ooh.
Space blasters.
Yeah, that wouldn't work in space though because there's no air, but if you've got an atmosphere, provided the atmosphere was similar to had enough oxygen in it, this would work, and you could actually fire
Wow.
Gods, I love your big, beautiful brain.
taser.
That's
Yeah,
So, because we've completely gone from our topic to Jewish space lasers.
we never got to the topic.
We never got to the topic because Matt was here and I wanted to bring up lasers.
That seems like a major advancement from traffic radar speed detection.
So to have a segue here, do you think there are some Christians that if they had access to these Jewish space lasers would just like to shoot all us atheists?
They probably wouldn't use them because they're Jewish space lasers.
Oh, because they're Jewish, yeah, they wouldn't be able to. They'd have to make special Christian ones that were.
Exactly. They'd have to have their own brand on it.
Okay, I gotta read this out, because Dog in the comments, Antifa funded the Jews to develop the space lasers, and they were developed in a Marxist pizzeria funded by Hitler, who's still alive. That wins comment of the night.
That's
Dog just
QAnon
took-
for you.
Dog just took us on a tour. That was a tour.
Well, I like Don Cure's one just above that.
Yeah.
The lasers are more precise now. They're doing circumcisions from space.
Space.
That almost
that's-
zero G
that's-
circumcision. That just sounds even more painful.
So the
Dangerous.
Jewish family take their baby boys outside. They hold them up to the sky, and the Jewish space lasers circumcise their child.
Yeah, and it's the fucking the song from The Lion King is playing.
Yeah.
Oh, what a scene.
That's what they were doing with Simba.
This
Simba
is
was
why-
the Jewish
QAnon are
lion,
crazy.
and he was
That's not news.
circumcised.
And this is why I still watch documentaries and old hockey games on YouTube.
That begs the question:
part
is that
about
how did Scar get his injury because he was one of the first children who was circumcised in that way? But they weren't very accurate with the laser back then.
Oh.
But you know what? A scar on the face is way better than having your shit just lopped off with a laser. That could not be pleasant.
That's true.
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Like, if you're gonna fuck up, hit me in the face, hit me anywhere else. No.
Is that why Scar was an illegitimate leader because he wasn't properly circumcised?
Yeah.
Maybe. Okay. Like,
This conversation
and we
has
don't
gone
even
to
touch on
places
his,
I never
like,
thought it would.
rampant anti-Semitism and the fact that he was, okay.
Yeah.
Anyways,
The earlier point about Adolf Hitler still being alive, which is nuts, reminds me of a conspiracy theory I heard years ago about how Adolf Hitler and Elvis Presley are living in Africa and have a bunch of black slaves serving them day and night.
That's
It's
not
just-
you know, people
Are
around
they
here-
lovers in this story? Because that could make an interesting movie.
You know, to be fair, to be completely fair, people around here still believe Tupac is alive, and people have seen Tupac. They've taken pictures of Tupac. You know,
Could
So-
could this be,
people don't
could
like
they call this
their idols die.
Heartbreak Mountain or something?
Can
How
I
did
just,
Tupac die?
he was shot
That's
Well,
what I thought.
at a
Okay.
stoplight in Las Vegas.
Well, okay, gang violence.
Yeah.
Were you going to say
Well,
something, Matt?
It was one of those things. He like.
No.
There was a lot of tension, and if you say "bring it, bring it, bring it," eventually somebody will. And it's always the wannabes. It's Notorious B.I.G. died the exact same way.
Biggie Smalls.
They both kind of, said things and hyped up people, and people utterly and completely took it into their own hands. Speaking of which, to segue, I was canceled today. And Kitty, you can say I told you so, if you can hear me. Kitty, you can say I told you so, but I was canceled today by somebody I respected, and I'm not even mad about it. But it was more guilt by association because I'm trying to bring it back to the topic
Topic.
of why
What
why
did you
we're
get canceled
all.
for?
We now have to debate the definition of the topic.
Well, basically, for being on a stream with Steve McRae, this person no longer speaks to me, and I stupidly was in their chat, and I'm like, why is no one speaking to me today? And then it dawned on me, and you know what? I take full responsibility for all of my actions. I'm a grown adult, So I what other people choose to do, I'm not.
I think
mad
it's
about it,
important to say something like, I've disassociated myself from Steve McRae. There's ethical reasons I have for that, because he ended up doing some things that are really not acceptable. But I don't expect other people to follow me on that. And I think it's wrong to tell people that you can't hang around with who you want to hang around with.
I agree completely, Randolph.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of those things a person can say, all right, this is my line in the sand. I will
Yeah.
not platform a person. I
Yeah.
will not be on a platform with a person.
Mhm.
But it's your own individual choice to make. Nobody should make that choice for you by saying
Right.
who you can and can't associate with.
Absolutely, and I
I think it's totally fair to-
I just want to say I still respect this person.
You always
I
just
have-
want to say.
I completely so they have their own reasons, and I completely understand that, you know. But I think it's shitty. But
I
you
think
know,
the
that's
moment
what-
we start saying to each other, especially as we've all got our own channels and we've got our own things, you
So-
can't platform a person because I don't like them. It is the moment that we've that we're no longer being respectful of each other.
See, in
Because-
elementary school, my kids, of course, they came home once in a while and said, "Oh, somebody's telling me not to be friend with somebody else," and so we had a conversation about it. And so they've basically gone back and said, "Hey, you can be friends with whoever you want. You can't control who my friends are." It's an attempt at manipulation.
It
And
is.
People are attempting to manipulate you. The number one thing that you can keep in mind from that is they don't have your best interests at heart.
exactly, and that was my first thing. And instead of it being enraged, I felt sorry for that person.
And we
Okay.
don't all experience the
I-
same things from other people all the time because
I feel sorry for the mind that would do that, though. Like,
I'm aware of some of the grievances some people have with Steve, and I think some of them are very justified. I think some of them aren't as justified as others. But
I think that
that's
happens
my-
to a lot of people, but I think I'd rather not talk about him if that's okay.
Exactly.
No,
I
no,
was
that's
about to
okay.
say, we
That's
should- we
okay.
should
I'm
segue,
just using
because
this
there's
as
a
a-
bigger topic. There's a much bigger topic
This
here.
is just
than
part of the
one person.
example there. And but my point from that would be that any of us can platform more or less anyone. I think there's some extremes where it's not you wouldn't actually bring on somebody who was convicted of some heinous crime.
I will say, actually, I would if they were now in the stage of their life where they're trying to educate people about why what they did was wrong.
Well, yes, no,
Like
I agree
somebody
with you on
Yeah.
that.
Drunk
So-
driver and they killed somebody, then them going and saying, look, what I did was stupid. Totally.
Well,
But,
an example of
you know,
somebody who's like that
There's a
is
fine line.
grumpy
There's a
old
fine
dude
line.
Ed.
Yeah.
Well,
The
it's
grumpy
like
judgment.
Tip Door. I don't know if many are part of, or follow some of the stuff going on with him, but he's gone kind of down a conspiracy theory thing. Like, he used to be involved with the Young Turks and like Kyle Kalinske from Secular Talk. Well, he just recently platformed one of the Boogaloo Boys, and he was trying to say, yeah, we can go and the left can unite with these people, and it's like they're full of racists and bigots, and they call for violent overthrow of the government, and people were like, what are you doing whitewashing this group? No, don't do that, So in a case like that where it's like someone that has done harm or caused harm, platforming an unrepentant murderer or someone who's committed a violent sexual assault, I would say don't platform that person.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, and I've heard some arguments made that platforming them could in theory be okay if it was to try and debate them, but I think in certain situations that doesn't really work. I'm gonna pull up an example from kind of this phase I move in. Stephen McNallen is a pagan who runs a group, and his view is that that Europe should, by any means necessary, return itself to its pure white form.
I've heard
And
a
it's-
lot of that, actually.
And it's like, fuck that guy.
Yeah,
I would.
It depends what it is. I have no interest in putting somebody on who's done sexual harassment, for example. I want nothing to do with people like that, because
Exactly.
when they get the exposure, and if they're not trying to correct their past behavior, that's an issue. I don't want to bring them on. So if there is somebody, for example, who, let's say I had an option to interview Kim Jong-un or his son,
Yeah.
I guess, and I could start it off by, and the condition would be, I'd be say, look, I'm going to start off by saying I disagree with your views, but I want to find out what your rationale is. And then please be aware that we're probably going to do a follow-up video afterwards and challenge the ideas that you put forward. And I'm going to be straightforward with a person beforehand, no matter how bad they are, and tell them something like that. And then I'll make that clear to the audience. That's what the purpose is, to understand what their thinking is. And then we're going to have another talk another day, bring some guests on, some professionals who deal with stuff like this to get their perspective. I'll try to do something more constructive like that. And I think as long as the approach is meant to be constructive, then I think that some exceptions can be made in most cases.
But what about somebody like Branch Davidian, like someone that believes that David Koresh is going to come back one day? Could you talk to someone like that?
Yeah, I could, but I would put some terms ahead of time like that with them and let them know that my intention will be to be constructive. We want to find out what your thinking is, what your justification is, and we will be discussing it later when you're not around and critiquing your views. And I'll send you the video links for those so you can watch them later, but just so you know, this is what's going to happen.
Because my problem is sometimes I don't... I think in the atheist community we have a fine line, because I'm LGBTQIA++. I just like saying that. And the whole reason I say that is because there's certain people in our community that I think are complete homophobes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, so instead
definitely.
of, at first I was like, oh, I should say something, and instead I just don't associate with them at all.
Yeah.
You know,
you got to decide what works best for you on that. Yeah.
I think that while platforming to deal with an issue can be good, sometimes platforming gives an issue more, either more credibility or more people find out about it, such that it causes further problem. And that is a thing any person with a platform has to weigh before platforming a shitty person.
Bingo.
But there's also, you know, if you don't have these difficult conversations, then it further drives it kind of into darkness, where you have your echo chambers, like on Parler, for example. You know,
Exactly.
Now, I was fine with Trump being deplatformed because enough is enough.
Yes.
You know, and
The timing was good.
I'm not shedding any tears over Parler not being a thing at all anymore right now. At least, you know, I don't think they've been able to find
they've got servers in Russia. They've got servers in Russia now.
Oh, that's lovely.
Yeah,
of course they do. But the thing,
they're back online.
Like, that's the thing. Like, it's always that really hard thing, because there's the whole, you know, daylight's the best disinfectant, but you are also drawing attention to something, and there is a non-zero number of people that are going to hear these heinous things and think, hey, that sounds good to me, and then they find community with someone like-minded. So it is a very
that's why it's
road to go.
Yeah, that's why it's got to be a weighing up your odds and trying to balance it thing.
Okay, I love that.
Randolph, you come with the best.
So much.
Yep. So could I just add second what Kitty was saying, and that I kind of don't believe in deplatforming in general, with the exception of when someone is pushing forward ideas that call for abuse, whether that's physical violence or whether that's mental. As soon as somebody starts saying something that is going to hurt someone, they should be taken down immediately. But apart from that, you should give people the ability to speak their mind. Otherwise, they will move.
That's a good rule of thumb, I think.
But I have a quick question.
I want to add to Kitty's point first, if you don't mind.
Oh, go ahead.
Like what she's saying about putting people into dark places is exactly right. When you limit people and say you can't do this publicly, you don't get to speak like everybody else does, they do go into a black market kind of situation where they're behind the scenes building up their own echo chambers, and the pressure for them builds up like a pressure cooker, and one day it explodes. So it's so important what she's saying, what Kitty just said about having this free exchange of ideas, as I like to call it. This has to carry on, and hard conversations and conversations that people find uncomfortable and find offensive are usually the most important progenitors of progress for global societies.
I agree with that, but I'm not going to sit in a room when someone is screaming the N-word over and over and over.
Well, no.
You've got to.
It's like I was against, you know, when I forget what college it was, but there was going to be a right-wing speaker. I don't know if it was Shapiro or Milo Yiannopoulos. Like, Milo, I was fine with him being deplatformed because of his, like, disgusting views on child grooming.
Yeah, he was bad.
With Ben Shapiro is a prime example of somebody who I find completely and utterly odious. Absolutely disgusting. But I would not say don't let him speak. However, I would, if he were going to speak at a college that I was attending, on the same night, or the very next night, I would host my own, TED Talk, so to speak, literally debunking all of the bullshit. Like, I would literally let him speak, have it broadcast to where I'm at, and be like, all right, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, here's all the facts, and do a counter demonstration with facts and evidence, as opposed to silencing him, because then you give him martyrdom, and that is the worst thing you can do to these people.
With the rate at which Shapiro talks, though, you'd need at least twice as long as he had.
Well, you have to have a stenographer, actually, with a stenographer doing your Googling.
He's more insecure. He's more insecure than dangerous. Milo was dangerous.
Yeah, Milo's not insecure at all.
Just like someone like Katie Hopkins.
Milo loves the attention. I think banishments need to be, and deplatforming needs to be earned.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with people like Ben is that Ben Shapiro is just, at this point, good meme material, rather than a problem.
Milo Yiannopoulos definitely earned his. Sorry?
I do have keyword.
Yeah.
Matt, I have before I forget. So, would you consider Trump being on that list of what you were saying about being harmful?
Definitely. His actions over the last few years has definitely...
His actions and what he said before he got elected as well, when he was running. Yeah.
Because so that's what I said about if that person is going to promote anything that will cause likely physical or mental abuse, which I think is a pretty easy argument, particularly his treatment of COVID. As someone who has, a lot of my friends are, PhDs or scientists. A lot of them actually have backgrounds in immunology or in medicine, and then as well as my parents, I just when you actually look at how much of the medical community was like, this is how we've got to handle it, and then he went out and said the opposite. That alone was enough for me to say he should have probably been put in jail. He said, I don't think anyone has the right to take action that will deliberately kill, or incidentally kill like that.
I don't think it was by accident.
But I had that as a hypothetical. That's what I was going to try and bring up before. Then what about, and I'm not sure exactly where I sit about like anti-vaxxers, because that's a case where it is clear they are going to cause physical harm, potentially mental harm as well.
I think a lot of people who fall for anti-vax rhetoric need what they really need, rather than deplatforming completely, is a reduction of platforming of anti-vaxxers, and where we do platform them, we juxtapose it to actual information.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. So I don't really agree with like YouTube's approach of just don't show anything. Take the Flat Earth for example. They just won't show Flat Earth videos in the suggested feed, or not as much. While I don't really care about Flat Earth, if you're doing that in general, I don't like that approach. We don't agree with these people, so we just won't show it.
Well,
I agree with Sam. It should be a bit more of a mix.
So
YouTube's execution is extremely flawed, because they leave it all up to the bots, so that winds up canceling the debunkers more often than winds up canceling the bad ideas.
Part of the problem is the complexity of the copyright laws. Thanks to all kinds of people who've been lobbying governments and made them more complicated over the years as well. But to just get quickly back to just Trump for a moment, there's two things that stand out to me that he said. Like when it came to the COVID-19 stuff, I remember him saying that he read some whole document and medical recommendations on wearing a mask, but he then made the point of saying it's optional, so you don't actually have to wear it. So he's not going to wear it because it's optional. And I thought, you are the leader of a nation. You have a chance here you've read this, you're informed, and you're suggesting people shouldn't wear it? That's ridiculous.
He went out of his way. He went out of his way to talk sideways out of his mouth.
Yeah.
But then he also, before he got elected, he also was talking about, I remember he said, kick them out of here and be as violent or just
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
I'll pay your legal bills, he said. That's incitement of violence.
We have 4% of the world's population, roughly, in the United States, and we have 25% of the COVID cases and deaths.
Oh.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
We have lost almost 500,000 Americans.
Yeah.
Well,
do you know
and
how
Trump
many
said
COVID
into the
cases?
conspiracy thing that he said in October that after November 3rd, no one's going to be talking about COVID. He fed into the whole thing that it's all just staged to make him lose the election.
Well, it's still here, and he lost the election.
Guys, it makes me so
Yeah.
angry. Like, anti-vaxxers, anti-maskers. Like, since the start of the pandemic, everybody knows I've been sewing masks. I have sewed hundreds upon hundreds of masks and given them away. And it makes me so angry. Like, I literally, November, December, I had to take some time off from sewing because I was so depressed and disheartened. I mean, first I got sick, and I had the flu. So I wasn't going to be sewing, obviously, while I'm sick. And then it took a while for me to get back into it because I was just so disheartened. It's like, I'm, pushing myself to do this. I deal with chronic pain. So sewing for many hours at a time, it's a toll. It takes a toll out on me. But I do it because it's the right thing to do. And it's because I can do it, And so I do this, and the numbers, it seemed like, my drop in the ocean wasn't doing anything, and it was really depressing. And, after the holidays, I was like, okay, you know what? I need to just reset because this is important and I need to get back to it. And I have since done so, but God, it's just seeing my country literally just shove their heads in the sand and allow their family members to die.
Americans have shoved their heads somewhere else.
I relate. The thing is, I relate to that because here, everyone else goes, "Oh, we're fine. We're not as bad as America," and ignores all of our problems.
You had 100,000 cases yesterday or the other day in one day? You had 100,000 positive, or was it 100,000 deaths that you're up to? Sorry, I can't remember exactly, but you guys have got a lot.
Wow.
Oh yeah, we are second worst on the planet.
And can I just point out something that's on a slightly nicer note? Do you know how many cases my state has had today?
None.
None.
Nice.
We haven't had a case now for 2 weeks.
That's
We
great.
keep having minor outbreaks, but what our government does, there is sometimes a bit slow, and you can always have the debates about which party would be the best and what's going on. But overall, our government, whilst the states don't always agree with each other about borders, has done a very good job. So if you want an example of what would happen if the governments had taken it seriously, if politicians had taken it seriously, so this whole argument of, oh no, we were trying not to create a panic, you can look at how Australia and New Zealand and other countries like that have handled it.
Well, the example in Australia at the moment is actually WA, because we had a case over the weekend, and now we're in full, complete lockdown for the next 5 days
you had
at
one
least.
Case, a security
One
worker
case.
in the hotel quarantines, and you're in lockdown for 5 days. I got a mate down there.
Yeah.
I mean, fuck the koalas. They can burn, but I mean, at least the people aren't going to get COVID. We'll take care of them.
We tried to stop the burning, but unfortunately too much of
Stop
the
the
state was on
burn.
fire to do that effectively.
Yeah.
Trust me, in California, I know all about that. A 7-day... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
So I was one of the protests people did was they lined up outside of our premier's house and threw stuffed koalas at it.
I mean,
so in Los
Sorry, I
Angeles
was a bit
County-
distracted then. I was making sure everyone's links were in the description because I have a bad
have,
habit of not getting back to them later.
Yeah, I have to do that in my chats. I always
Yeah,
have to
I realized you
come
guys were running all right without me, so I figured I'd make sure I got everybody in there now. And I was going to start
guys
posting in the
don't
chat, but
realize
thank you,
Vegan
Robert
X,
X, for posting.
being on top of it all the time.
Yeah.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
Robert
we
X,
haven't
too.
really. I don't think we've really touched on the topic much so far, but we've had an interesting conversation.
Yeah.
We certainly have. We've had several interesting conversations, starting with lasers.
Well, I did bring up how I got canceled and it's gone to COVID. In LA, our 7-day average is 26,995 people every 7 days. That's how insane it is here.
Yeah, in Minnesota, we're averaging just over 1,000 new cases a day.
We've been seeing an increase in Canada lately, which is fairly consistent with the increase in anti-maskers.
I don't understand it. I'm a born asthmatic, so everything scares me anyways. I have
The more
alarm.
we see anti-vaxxers around, a couple of weeks later, there's an outbreak. Sure enough, every time. It's horrible.
So here in Florida, we've had a total of 1.71 million cases. We had 15,000 new cases today. Our 7-day average is 10,525 cases, and we've had nearly 30,000 deaths.
Wow.
It's just horrible from a.
What's the total for the country now? Last I heard it was 400,000.
439,000. 439,000.
Getting
down.
Like right now. All right.
I believe you.
That's not gonna show up on
I do that all the
Twitter.
time. I do that all the time.
But do you know what I reckon might help some of the anti-maskers? Just point out to them that COVID affects every cell in your body, and there's been known cases of erectile dysfunction.
They don't care.
Well,
They
and here's
don't
the
care.
Having
People
said
still
that,
smoke cigarettes.
I've got a friend I went to high school with who actually posted on Facebook this morning that she will not be getting the vaccine because she doesn't trust it. And that's in Australia. If we have that here, how
Sorry,
bad is it in other countries where
as
that
soon as I'm
paranoia
eligible,
is
I'm
so
like,
much?
fucking shoot me up, bitch. Let's do it.
Yeah. Yeah,
I was trying to play into their own paranoia and trying to promote
Dan?
that wearing masks screws up the facial recognition software the deep state uses to track us.
Here in Canada, the
I-
arguments don't work.
The best I can say for where I am at the moment is the fact that since we've started lockdown, the numbers have started to come down drastically again.
That makes sense.
It works, and I think Victoria, the state of Victoria here, was a good example of that. Where they started getting like 100 cases a day, and they didn't know where most of them were coming from, and they put it into lockdown. And you can see 2 weeks later the numbers start to drop again. And they brought in a mask law as well. New South Wales, we had 1 day of 30 cases just before Christmas. It was the worst timing for it. They brought in mask laws and lockdown laws, and now we're back to none. But yeah, looking at some countries around the world, it is quite bad. But sorry, Jen, I missed. Who was it who was saying they wouldn't get the?
A friend I went to school with, yeah, she was just saying, I'm not going to do that. And she actually posted this tweet about it, and people were saying, well, I definitely am. As we do, we're saying, yeah, we're definitely going to do it. And but there were actually other people in their responses going, who are also Australian, going, no, I don't trust it. So that mistrust is in our community as well. I mean, that's not surprising because people are. But she's not stupid. She's an intelligent woman, and in most situations, she's not an anti-vaxxer. She doesn't believe that vaccines are a problem or anything like that. She just doesn't trust this one.
Well,
Yeah,
I know a lot of people say they don't trust them because they were rushed through the testing.
Yeah,
I can
the
see.
Testing.
I know
Yeah,
someone
what was
that
that, Matt?
I know someone that
Can
just
I-
had a
can I make-
COVID. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I just want to say on that testing thing, the only reason these were faster than any other vaccine is they came up with a new way of doing vaccine. So the Pfizer, the AstraZeneca, Australia had one in Brisbane that was looking promising until it had some unfortunate false positives for HIV. We, all of them have gone through the same amount of trials, have met the same standard as every other vaccine you could give to someone.
Well, and in the U.S., a lot of it wasn't really so much that the testing was rushed as they sped up the government approval. So it was just getting the bureaucrats to do the paperwork immediately instead of it sitting on somebody's desk 2 or 3 months.
And
I can understand how a complete layperson would come to that conclusion. It's just that conclusion happens to be wrong in this case.
Yeah, and this
honestly,
is why I would. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
No, you go. You go.
Okay, well, I was going to say, from the reading that I was doing on it, it's essentially like, SARS. And after SARS, I mean, that just kind of went away. but that's when they started doing the research on like the spike protein, because it was also a coronavirus. And so that research has been going on for like 6 years. They just didn't have a virus to actually really test on. Like they were waiting for the next coronavirus.
The RNA vaccines they've been working on for years. I mean, it wasn't just developed for coronavirus. They've been working on them for years. So, but it was accelerated to an extent because of the need that we had. So, what actually happened was work on other vaccines and other medicines was delayed to deal with this pandemic. Resources were pushed in a particular direction.
Yeah, because this one's more lethal.
Maya Atkinson kind of had Maya Atkinson kind of had a point of 60 to 7% of hospital staff have declined to take the vaccine. I know someone who works frontline and has declined to take the vaccine.
See, I would want a citation on that number, but it would unfortunately not surprise me.
Well, let's say I think number sounded kind of high. What I had heard was it was more like around 30%.
I know someone that works with mentally disabled adults, and I do as well. Yeah. We all have to get the vaccine, and they're refusing to get the vaccine. Yeah,
but it's still very troubling that people who are working in the hospital are still not willing to get the vaccines.
That's just crazy. That's an insane number.
If you're a medical professional, you know the importance of vaccines. So
wow.
you should.
Everybody's happy to have it. It just can't come soon enough.
Having said that, I don't know if Matt was on the stream, but I know Sam was. We did a Stump Gen about a month back where I was saying that I had concerns about the vaccine. Not that I wouldn't get it, but I still had concerns.
Yeah, that comes up.
That was familiar. Yeah, that me and you were both kind of saying that like there wasn't as much information about what testing had been done at the time. So we had suspicions, but we still thought it was important to take. And with the new information, I'm more confident.
Oh, I am 100% confident now.
You know what? I get sick from the flu shot, but I get the flu shot every year.
Were you in that discussion, Matt?
I'm immunocompromised, and I still get it every year.
Yeah, Matt was in that conversation.
You were in that conversation, weren't you, Matt? Yeah.
Yeah. But this is what it goes to why one of the reasons I started my little YouTube channel on science is that science communication has to fight against all this misinformation. Misinformation is easy to make. It's easy to say something wrong. It is very difficult to say something correct. So there needs to be so many people with the right information, with the right background, who just have to repeat these basic things over and over again. I was talking to Dr. Carl about this misinformation, and so for anyone who doesn't know, he's Australia's Bill Nye. And
Australia's Bill Nye,
at the time, the 9 months or so that COVID had been around, there was more misinformation already on that than there was about climate change. And there were companies for decades trying to put misinformation out about climate change. So it just goes to show how quickly this spreads. And one of the big problems with that is that it's really hard to write a compelling journal article on science if you want to be super accurate, because science is a very slow and boring process. Whereas that doesn't sell articles. So even the media, it tends to be harder just because of the way it's set up. It's you just need more people on every platform trying to say, no, here's the science, this is what it is. Because most people, if they get the right information, will make a better decision. The problem is they haven't got access to that for one reason or another.
And that's also the problem, because propaganda works. So I've been talking to a lot of scared people. A lot of who just because of misinformation, they don't want to take it, or some stupid post they saw on Twitter or Facebook or something.
Part of that is people's misunderstanding of science, because science doesn't deal in absolutes. I mean, maths does, but science doesn't. We deal with weights of evidence. So there are certain things in the universe that are constants and things like that, but in general, science is dealing with weight of evidence, so we can never conclusively say this is this. There is always going to be an element of doubt because it's built into the scientific method. So And
So
what happens is when a layperson gets hold of that element of doubt, it becomes a huge amount of doubt instead of looking at the weight of evidence.
It does. And in terms of that number where we thought it was a bit high, I've done a quick Google and I found a couple of articles with the figure being at 40%. It was a couple of weeks ago, but I would argue it's probably still accurate, and I've just stuck that in the chat.
Here's the thing. Fortunately, science is self-correcting, though. I mean,
yes.
That's the one thing that I think anybody who, is doubtful or suspicious, I mean, you just need to reiterate that to them, that, science is self-correcting, and anything that doesn't work will get weeded out by the process.
Unfortunately, some people, and particularly, people with a very Christian mindset, see that as being a problem, that they point out that, well, science used to say this and now they say this, so you can't rely on it because it keeps changing.
That's the whole point. We are changing. Life, is progressing.
Yeah, but that's what I mean, that, people who don't really understand the scientific method think the fact that the experts are saying something different than they said 10 years ago means it doesn't work.
Yeah.
I would just reiterate that it means that it does. I mean, things that don't change stagnate. Like, as we get a better understanding of the world, the fact that science is self-correcting is why I put my trust in it. I don't want to say faith, because that is too loaded a term. I put my trust in science because it is self-correcting, and it weeds out bad ideas by rigorously testing them and proving them wrong. I mean, what other field do you go into where you're literally trying to prove your own shit wrong?
And that's
come on now.
That's what I love about science, is that it's constantly correcting itself. Constantly.
Yeah, it's
Christianity won't do that. Christianity
it's part of why
anything that embraces doubt, I have confidence in.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why when let's say, let's look at this new evidence, I definitely will. No one, I don't hear people saying, let's look at this new evidence in the Bible, or let's look at this new stuff from this holy book.
Well, and in science, people literally win awards for proving something that's been long held is incorrect.
Absolutely.
And this actually ties us into our topic.
Yeah.
The reason I trust in science, over religion is because it is self-correcting. And it is one of the reasons why, one of the reasons I'm a non-believer is because those books, those teachings have not ever changed. Yet the world around us has changed.
And our knowledge of the world around us has changed.
Sorry, Jen.
Sorry?
What was that?
I said, but our knowledge of the world has changed, and religious fundamentalism hasn't kept up with those changes. I won't say that all religions haven't kept up with the change, because there are religious people out there who embrace science as well. There are certainly people of faith who embrace science, and
the Human Genome Project.
I mean, look at Sam, for instance. So Sam is a religious person who embraces science. So,
as the pagan in the room, I'll point out that science is important, and that certain faiths are willing to be self-correcting. But I will agree, the majority of people who are religious are not willing to do that, and that is the problem.
I agree. And by no means is this dogging on all religion. It's just people who want to bludgeon you over the head with the same thing over and over. Which
fuck those guys.
It's truly, it's to me, it's real life insanity. If you say the same thing over and over and over, you're insane.
I mean, if we go back to when most of these religious texts were written, I would be property. I would have to only, give into my heterosexual side. My bisexuality would get me killed. So I would have to live as, a cishet woman. There are people in this group that would either be put to death, be property, or both. Be property and then put to death. So if your text, if you're still holding up a text that says that I should be property, or that Jen shouldn't be her true self, or should be put to death for who she is, or that Will should be put to death for who he is attracted to. No, absolutely fucking not. Like, I'm sorry, if you're still holding this up as the truth, the way, the light, this paragon of this was what my God said, your God's a fucking asshole. And I'm sorry, but like, we have evolved beyond the need for your fucking God.
Yeah.
we don't need to be
Our
controlled.
socially evolved morals are actually better than the ones in your Bible.
And
Well,
even
you can actually. Sorry, I was going to say, I love my history. I like looking at how things come from over time because it tells us how we've got to here. And
absolutely.
all religions have changed. You can see that very, very clearly looking at history as to what people used to believe and what they believe now. And I think one of the big problems with why the issue with what Kitty was bringing about that they're still holding to a book that says pretty horrible things is most people don't read that, and those who've read those bits don't take it seriously. Like, I've met very, very few people that have ever called for the death penalty for homosexuals. They will not want them to get married, but unless you're one person I know who was trying to get a rise out of me, no, I've never actually hear anyone say, should we actually kill them? So it's more of that the book holds some special sway because that's what everyone else around you believes.
I don't
They
fully agree with
look at the
this.
few nicer bits in it, and then they say, "Well, look, then it's all good." But people tend to have very strong.
Some
I don't
Christians
fully-
do, but there are extremists who aren't that, Matt.
I
If
don't-
you look
I
at
don't-
NFIB or people like that, they hold the tenets there that they would quite happily line up LGBT people and shoot them.
Yeah, and my point wasn't that
they
they don't exist.
regularly talk about it. Regularly, at least in the.
I can't agree with it because there's been extremists all throughout history, and I think the majority of people following a religion probably just try to keep off the radar of the angry leaders and just kind of live their day by day lives. I think it's just a small group of people, always has been and still is today, a small percentage of them who are the extremists who basically are showing how bad the religion can get.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's a small percentage on the fringe, and every group has some fanatics.
And the problem is that the other people who are just following along aren't standing out against it. Like, I was in a debate a few weeks ago about the Ten Commandments, and the other guy, it turned out he wasn't wearing pants through the whole stream. And near the end, he stood up and showed everything.
Yeah.
He was wearing
Oh, for
nothing
goodness.
below the
Yeah,
belt.
I heard about that. I didn't see
But
it.
the thing is,
I saw
yeah,
that.
Granny!
That's awesome stuff.
I know her.
Hey.
She's nice. But what happened afterwards, that guy went on channel with his Christian buddies, and one of the first things they asked him, somebody told me, was I went to go and watch a little bit and see what they're going to say about it. And they asked him, "Oh, you ended up showing all your stuff, ha ha ha," and he laughed about it, they laughed about it. Not a single one of them stood up and said to him, "You're not representing Christians properly when you do that," or "You're giving us a bad name," or "That's not appropriate." There was nothing stopping that, nothing pushing against it. And all these people, in a way, even though they're not extremists themselves, they're providing an excuse. They're not pushing back against others. They're afraid of nonconformance. And so this is a problem with the religious mindset that I
They're
find.
doing the same thing that Christians complain moderate Islamists about not doing to extremist Islamists. It's the same thing.
You see the same thing in Islam. You see it in other religions too.
Yeah,
When
and by
people are part of
remaining
a group-
silent, they give a nod
Yeah.
of approval.
When people are part of a group, they naturally don't want to call out others in the group because they're
And-
afraid of being ostracized themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have unfortunately also historically seen it with my lot.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up, Sam. I was going to say no offense to you, but there's elements within the pagan community
Oh,
that are
yeah.
the same.
I mean,
that hold
there's-
extremist
there's-
views who some people in the pagan community will not call out because they feel that I'm not sure where. I think it comes from a thing that if you call out somebody in your own community, then you're degrading
I
your whole
mean,
community. I don't think that's true. I think you need
there
to call
is
out the bad
a-
elements.
There is a reason we
people
have
wanna fight.
there is a reason we have declarations 127 and Xenia,
Yeah.
which basically say by signing this I agree to call out other pagans' bigoted bullshit if I see it, which every pagan I know has signed.
Yeah.
The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is that good men do nothing. And
Absolutely.
I think that speaks to the core of what we're talking about.
It does.
And the fact that, I mean, my view on the whole religion thing is it goes as follows. You know, it goes back to our early primal ancestors, like hunter-gatherer man. I stab the deer dies, cause, effect. But things like aging, disease, weather, natural disasters, they see the effect and they think there must be something bigger that is the cause. And from that you get the more spiritual Native American Aboriginal type beliefs, and eventually polytheism like the Egyptians, Romans, Greeks, and Celts, and then eventually monotheism. And ultimately it comes down to control, especially in Judeo-Christian and Islam, like the Abrahamic religions especially. It comes down to control. I mean, it's a business, and it's a brilliant business model. Convince people that there's something wrong with them, sin, and you have
Provide
to
the cure.
cure. You
Yeah.
have to do what I say
Absolutely.
and give me money. And it works both ways too. Like, not only is it used to control the masses, but also a lot of people were illiterate. They couldn't read the text for themselves. They had to believe what their preacher or priest
Bingo.
was telling them, and they had a really shit lot in life. You're a peasant working a farm, eating cabbage soup every fucking night. You're fucking miserable. And yet you're told, okay, you have this immortal soul, and if you are good, if you are righteous and pious, you will have eternal life and eternal bliss and an end to your suffering. This is just the step, and this is where the death cult thing comes in, where it's like, this is only a stepping stone for the afterlife. And it's that cosmic carrot on a stick that got people to do what they wanted, and it kept them it kept them docile. It kept them from rising up, because you had to, render onto Caesar and all that. Pay your taxes, pay your tithes, do what you're told, follow the laws, and you will be
I want
rewarded
to just
in
pull
the
one thing
afterlife.
up with the end. I do agree with you for the most part there, and it is a very good control method. And the part about, this is only a stepping stone. But the last bit, give to Caesar what is Caesar's, is actually the reason why the Roman Empire banned Christianity in the first place, is because it was a very good tool for making martyrs who were willing to die rather than submit to Rome. So I know a lot of apologists like to say, well, oh no, this was the Romans trying to suppress this new thing and they couldn't hide the truth. No, they either used them as a scapegoat, but the main reason they banned Christianity was because it was violent, because it came out of very, very dangerous roots. And people
It's a
forget
death
that.
cult.
The thing with
And
'cause
coming
the
forward,
thing with
I was just saying, they're going forward with, when the Roman Empire eventually allowed Christianity and then banned it. Do you know what the main reason was? Why they, not for rebanning it, but banning paganism? Do you, anyone here know the history of why paganism was banned? The short answer? Because it was more expensive. At the time, Christianity was cheaper than the pagan festivals, and the Roman Empire was in a lot of trouble. And yet people seem to forget these reasons.
Hi, mate.
Hi, man.
And the
Maya.
The other thing with
Maya.
Hiya.
Sorry.
The other thing with Christianity is that it plays on several other psych things, like the post hoc creation of hell was a fantastic psychological thing. That's why it caught on in terms of keeping people in, and
well, it's a way to control people. If you put a fear of a bad place, then you've got control.
As well as that, though, there is research that would suggest I forget where I read it, but it was a psychology thing where basically up to a certain point, sacrifice for the group means the group is more likely to be held together, and Christianity requires a significant sacrifice through tithing, and that is part of what made it stick, was that it played on that psychological concept of creating a community that you then felt the need to stay in.
Well, and fear is a very easy way to motivate people, and it's a very powerful motivator.
It's actually blackmail.
And it's a good way to control people as well.
Yeah, but
Because when they're scared, they're not thinking.
Well, you started out with, the
Spoken like a true
world
Republican.
is this big confusing place. Like Kitty was saying before, the weather and whether or not there's food and all these things, people felt out of control. It's very scary.
Yeah.
So you convince them it's okay because there's someone in control looking after you. So people are reassured by that, and then they turn around and say, but if you piss this guy off, you're doomed for eternity.
It's a good way for a certain group of people to control another group of people. When my dad used to always tell me stories about when he was a kid, he was told that he's from Savannah, Georgia, and slaves and people in general were told that they were the sons of Ham, and that was basically the excuse and the reason to enslave Africans.
Yeah.
And after a while, it just became a shitty excuse.
Yeah, I frequently heard the whole
Bible
Mark
to
of
me-
Cain bullshit.
Sorry, Sam.
I frequently heard the Mark of Cain bullshit to justify that having non-white skin is the Mark of Cain.
I go deaf to all of it. Since I was a kid,
But I mean,
tuned it out.
wasn't it considered one of Noah's sons that went off to be
It was, Ham.
Ham?
That's
Yeah.
why. Yeah, it was. That's why.
Well, yeah.
Ham
Well, they're
was
talking about
cursed
two different.
because he saw his father naked.
Yeah, there's two different theories. One is Cain, and then the other one's Ham.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
It's all
sad.
bullshit.
Yeah, exactly.
It's all, it's
From
of course
the
it's all
jump.
bullshit.
Possible unpopular opinion. Okay, so whenever it comes to a group that has a cosmic reward, like an afterlife thing, think, Christians do good deeds, go to heaven, that kind of thing. If they do something good, to me, it carries less weight than somebody who doesn't have an afterlife belief or is an atheist. Because to me, the atheist is doing something good because it's a good thing to do, because it's the right thing to do, not because they have some cosmic carrot cake waiting for them, there's no
Yeah.
Not because they're black
reward.
men. Not because
So
they're black men.
It's not coerced. It's not you do this so that you go to heaven, and you don't do that so
Yeah.
you don't go to hell. It's like, I don't rape, kill, or anything like that because it's bad to do those things, not because I'm worried about burning in hell for it. Same thing with
So-
I do good things for people because it's the right thing to do.
But I also.
So I would agree with you that it holds less weight from people who have hell belief, but I would specify hell belief rather than afterlife belief, because most systems of afterlives don't differentiate between good and bad people particularly. A lot of that is post-Christian writings.
And that's why I kind of specified with the cosmic reward. It was more
Yeah.
like paradise. You
Oh,
get a paradise for doing good things and then hell for bad things.
Oh yeah, and in that situation it does carry less weight, and I don't think a lot of people think about it necessarily. I don't think about it all too often because I'm surrounded by pagans, and a lot of Christians won't think about it too much because everyone around them does it.
It's just
Well,
inherently selfish. You're doing
but-
it so that you get
Well,
your
I
ticket
mean-
to heaven, not
Well, yeah,
because-
but I mean, if I don't know, I'm more of a means justify the ends kind of girl. So I tend to not be an anti-theist because it's like, if you holding a held belief keeps you from doing all the bad things or the things that we have all agreed in society that you should not do, then you fucking have that thing, right? I am all about it. I will help support you in it. I think that we need to get people around what are socially desirable behaviors and how do we meet people individually where they're at to get there. And how they get there, whether it's a God or whether it's a lot of people just don't have it in them. Like you said, I do believe most people are selfish and they have to have there has to be some kind of a carrot. There has to be a reason I'm going to get out of bed, whether I'm a Christian or an atheist or a pagan, to do this thing.
Well,
And I don't really care what it looks like as long as
I would Go on, sorry.
What I like to point out is that karma actually works, and it doesn't require any spiritual component. That,
Talking about the
you
law
know,
of cause and effect.
if
You
you're
sure you're
nice
not
to
confusing
people,
that with, you sure you're not confusing with Murphy's Law?
no, if you're nice to people when you need help, you've got friends around.
Yeah.
If you're an
That's
asshole
true.
on moving day, there's no one to lift the other end of the couch.
Absolutely.
There's definitely cause and effect there. Yeah.
Do you know,
Yeah, so I
work-
think. Go on, sorry.
Sam. I work with special needs adults, and I also work with the organization where, like, we go to the streets and we help homeless youth, we help homeless adults. I'm one of those people where I think talk is cheap. Like, when I see people out in the field, I'm like, these people are actually they're backing up what they say. I see a lot of performative activism where people are saying things online, they're posting memes, but like in downtown LA, like, we always need volunteers for the kitchen. We always need people. It's a revolving door, The movie stars will show up, take their little photo ops, but every day we need staff, we need help, So
Yeah.
it's harsh. That's why sometimes I have to tune out from YouTube, because I hear people talking huge and they're saying big stuff, and I'm like, man, like, we can't get help where I live, and there's people in my town that are saying huge things, and I'm like, wow, I wish you would bring your mouth over, to one of these organizations to help.
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
going back to what Maya was saying, like, I can think of a few people off the top of my head that I would not want them in society if they didn't have a fear of hell. G-Man being one of them.
I find it funny. I disagree with actually most people I know on this one, and possibly it's a little bit of naivety on my part, but I tend to think that people are not inherently selfish and that it is a bit of a cultural thing.
I think it's a hybrid between that and natural stuff.
As I traveled around a lot, and I'll kind of agree with you. Depending on where I was, people were either the nicest people in the world, or I had to get out of there because I shouldn't have been in the South.
Oh yeah,
So
it's entirely a
one of those
partially thing. I can't say that's entirely the case, but I think it's at least partially an influencer. I think that there are cultures that possible where people would be significantly nicer to each other.
No, yeah, 100%. But I tend to believe that altruism, or the appearance of it, just like goodwill towards your neighbor, is more social, like socially ingrained in someone.
So
I
certainly
believe
the
that
golden
we're just
rule is a
animals,
socially ingrained
and
thing.
We're
Yeah.
naturally inclined to be fearful.
So I've got a question that follows on from where the discussion's been. I'm sorry to talk over everyone. Given that we're all kind of in agreement that in some ways it's good that there's this fear of hell that might hold these people in check, that otherwise they might not be held in check. So they're being held in place by this thing. Does it make it worse when we as atheists who hold ourselves to this ideal that we can be this without having these fears of other things, that we can be altruistic and we can look at a moralistic ground that's evolved from the society we live in? Is it worse when one of us is bad?
No, it's different. That's all. The motivations are different. The reasons we use for not behaving that way are different. It's not worse, because there are religious people who will use religion to justify bad things.
Slavery and
slavery in the U.S.
Yeah.
People were fighting against that movement by using the Bible to justify it.
We still have slaves in the U.S.
Now-
it's just of a different color. That's all.
I
agree. No, I agree. I actually worked for a Ethiopian man that brought his indentured he said his indentured servant over here, and she never left. I would tell her all the time, like, run. This is LA. Like, I could call the cops for you. She was like, no, she was mentally enslaved to this man.
Yeah.
Well, it's more than just that. Like, there's also, forced prison labor and private prisons. There's more ways that people are enslaved. And even in the non-traditional sense, like, just the statistics on domestic violence in this country. As a domestic violence survivor myself, you'd actually probably be shocked at like just how strong the bars of that mental cage can be. Like stronger than anybody, you know, any metal bars that you might put someone in, any generic prison. Like what the mental prison you put yourself in is.
And the
so
excuses you'll make for the person you're with. Like, it's, you will in your mind make it okay that this thing has happened because you're in this relationship, and you have to, and it becomes the giving of yourself thing. So,
yeah, where you start to actually think, well, I did something wrong. I deserved this punishment.
Yes,
you know,
exactly.
I messed up. I just need to be better. I need to do more. I need to give more. And you give and give and give until there's literally nothing left. And
you can get to the point where you will apologize to the person who's abused you because you made them abuse you. That's how deep that psyche can go. Yeah,
and
I feel you. I feel you, hun.
If you break from that, if you do, the amount of hatred you have for yourself for being like, I hated myself when I finally got out of that relationship. I look back and I saw, you know, just how far I had fallen away from who I was as a person, how much I had changed, how much I had accepted just this passive. And I mean, it's difficult because you resent yourself for not being stronger to get away sooner. And like, that was what bothered me more. I hated myself more than I hated him for what he did to me. I hated myself more because I didn't stop it sooner. I was too scared. I was too set in that, well, I've got my health care, you know, I need my medications. If I'm just good, if I just do the right things and I don't say anything that'll make him angry, then everything will be fine. And it can be all consuming, and it's fucking gods, I hated myself so much. But like, I'm in a good place now. I'm in a happy, healthy relationship. I have a beautiful child. Luckily not from that ex.
That's a good thing.
I would not want that person in my life any longer. Fuck him. But aside from that, other than the few times that I've actually talked about it, you know, like he was religious as well. Catholic, brought up, mother did the whole vow of poverty, Franciscan friar thing, very religious, very conservative, Republican, and justified everything. And I mean, it's weird, like, there were times that, you know, I was trying to be a good wife, and I would make myself available for use of my husband. And it had gotten to a point where I literally would be devastated when he would not want to utilize me, when instead wanted to go, you know, handle it himself while watching gay porn. But, you know, he swore he wasn't gay. And when he had a trans sibling that was like, I am a girl, you know, I want to go by this name. And I was like, okay, honey, I'll teach you makeup tips. I will help you get a new wardrobe. You live your best life, sweetheart. And that actually was what triggered the fight the night that I escaped, was because I had this conversation with his sister, who had been born male, but was trans, was like, I am a woman. And this is an adult. It's not like a young child. This was somebody that was like 18, 19 years old. And they're like, no, I am female. And I said, I accept you. I love you for who you are. What can I do to help? You want me to send you some of my clothes? You got it, you know? And that literally triggered the fight that night. That I was had gotten off the call, was playing World of Warcraft, and in a Skype call with somebody that I was playing World of Warcraft with, and the guy came in and started just screaming at me, throwing shit, like, said some really horrible things. And this other person, who is actually my son's father, heard everything. And then my ex went and tripped the breaker to kill power to my room, because I was no longer allowed electricity. I wasn't allowed computer time. And so I texted Michael, and I was like, you know, this is what happened. He just tripped the breaker. He was like, you need to call your parents, and you need to have them come get you right now. I was like, no, it'll be fine. No, now. And I did, and I am so thankful I did, because then I went and I turned the power back on, and I was starting to, discreetly pack some things, and he came in and fucking shut me down, and he turned the power off again. When my parents got there, my mom said he had this fucking, serial killer look in his eye. They're looking at him from the front window, are you gonna let us in? And he just had this fucking, dead eye stare, and it scared the shit out of my mom. And she was there with my dad, and we packed up, the important things to me. One of them was my computer, which was given to me, but because my ex-husband had paid for the power supply, he was demanding that it be ripped out of the computer before he would let me walk out the door with it. My dad's like, I'll cut you a fucking check, get the fuck out of the way.
Controlling people are insane. When it gets down to that point, controlling people are, I still to this day, I can't
and I
stand
hated
people
myself for having stayed as long as I did.
We do, but we...
It took a long time to come to terms with that.
And do you still find, Kitty, that you sometimes still make excuses in your head?
So many excuses. And I had a religious family member that said, well, if you just made sure that you had a hot meal and a cold beer waiting for him, then maybe he wouldn't abuse you.
That's the worst.
This reminds me of a debate I was in about does the Bible condone slavery? And see, this sounds a lot like conditioning people to think this way. The other side, of course, the Bible doesn't condone slavery, and then at the end, somebody from the audience asked a question if they'd be willing to be me and Amy, my partner in the debate, be our slaves. They both answered in a way that pushed against their own position. One of them said no because we couldn't follow the Bible. The other one said, yeah, and he'd even be willing to take an awl to the ear for us. And it was just a surprise. I was not expecting him to say anything like that. And it dawns on me now that this is conditioning people to think that this is okay. And when you said that you have somebody telling you as long as you got the meal and all this stuff, that's the conditioning that's at work there, at play. And this is one of the problems with religions is they tell people to not think about these things, tell people to accept things this way, and this is a very bad standard.
Well, the attitude for fundamentalists towards women is disgusting. I mean, there is still teaching the aspect of they're still teaching the thing of women being the property of their husbands, and you have to do all the things you have to do for your husband, and that permeates through. It is, and it permeates through our culture a lot still. Yeah. So there are a lot of men out there who actually think this way.
Yeah. Well, the Bible has a very clear laid out hierarchy of authority.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
it teaches that you are not to question authority. So you're supposed to accept whatever your position is in that, whatever your tier is in the hierarchy, and you're not supposed to ask any questions of anyone above you. You're supposed to obey.
Yeah.
Well,
I saw a thing the other day that was like, when people get upset over other people trying to live their lives, for example, when a bunch of Gen Z kids are experimenting with their gender, it's probably because it messes with a power structure that benefits you.
Yeah.
I think Sammy Jenkins is bringing up a good point. I grew up in a kind of a it was weirdly controlling environment, but they used religion as control. We were at church at least 3 times a week. I was in catechism classes. There was always something going on. And so I was always around people who were telling me, oh, you're going to go to hell if you do A, B, or C, And I think that's the problem, is that you get indoctrinated into this young. Still to this day, there are certain habits that I have where I have to stop myself and be like, you're feeling guilty. If this is nothing but old indoctrination, you just need to get over it and move on.
Yeah, well, old programming, especially things you were taught as a child, are very hard to get rid of.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And for me, it wasn't from religion, but I still have a lot of those old tapes that I have to keep them in check.
Well, we all get those sort of things. Society puts those things on us. There are a lot of expectations in society that a lot of them have come from Judeo-Christian ideals in the past, which I think is actually poison to our society in a certain extent. The fact that the fact that Christians will go on, oh, you have Judeo-Christian laws. Well, that's fucked up if we still have them, because there's very few of them that are any fucking good.
Yeah, but Judeo-Christian was, excuse me, something that was resurrected to fit a narrative.
Oh,
they
yes,
brought it
definitely.
back just to exclude brown people, basically.
Well, even the way the Bible is interpreted into English, it's done in such a way to make certain things worse than they may have been. I mean, the Bible in the original Greek or in the original Greek translations or original written Greeks really doesn't talk much about LGBT people at all.
No,
those things were reinterpreted later during English translations.
Well, the Bible
See,
the Bible does condemn male homosexuality.
Arguably not actually. Arguably, it implicitly permits it, depending which bit of the Bible you're looking at.
Oh,
yeah.
Well,
yeah, it actually depends how you what translations you go back to, Randolph. So if you go back to the original Greek, it's not exactly that meaning, and it could be we don't know for sure, but it could be a mistranslation of the way that particular passage has been structured. So it's not necessarily a case that the Bible condoned these things, because we know from the historical past that there wasn't that physical condoning in the past. Even the stories of Sodom and Gomorrah, you're not talking about the fact that you weren't talking that the God's condemnation of Sodom and Gomorrah wasn't about there being homosexual people. It was about them being immoral in general.
Yeah, it was a morality tale. Because that's why Lot offered up his virgin daughter, was because he had invited them into his home, and he had, he, by the rules of hospitality, had to, try to protect them. So that's why he offered up his virgin daughters. But I do recall a while back that something about going back to like the older text, that it wasn't homosexuality that was condemned, but specifically having sex with children. And
yes, so it was more about pedophilia than it was about
young boys.
So I know a bit about this, and there are two leading theories as to, in various places, including Leviticus, where it mentions it. The fact that they had contact with the Greeks, and the Greeks permitted pedestry in certain situations, and it was a banning of that as a probable mistranslation, given that it was translated into basically every other language except English that I've checked as pedestry rather than homosexuality. And then when you look at older versions of Leviticus, before the meaning was changed to be compared to the Greeks, the original meaning was a man should not sleep with his siblings' children.
Wait, from which?
I can agree with that. Don't sleep with your nephews.
Wait, are we still talking about Sodom and Gomorrah, or are we talking about a different verse?
So that second bit was specifically Leviticus, but the first bit applies generally when homosexuality is mentioned, but then Sodom and Gomorrah specifically, it just says the sins of Sodom and Gomorrah, and the homosexuality bit of it is actually entirely implied in, I think, about 400 AD.
Yeah, and then later translations actually mention it, but it's not there in the earlier texts. So
yeah,
it's a context that was added later because the church wanted that condemnation in there. So
the most commonly quoted Bible verse that's supposed to be condemning homosexuality in the English is translated to "when a man lies with a man," but in the Greek, it was referring to a young boy.
Yep. And when we say Judeo-Christian, what we really mean is Christian that Judaism later altered to fit in with, otherwise they'd have been killed.
Yeah.
It just seems exclusionary
Kitty,
to me.
you're muted, honey.
Well, it is because the early church was very exclusatory. It
but
wanted
today-
certain things to be a certain way, and it's that same attitude the Catholic Church has now, where they don't want birth control because they want to breed lots of young Catholics because they're aware that they will lose Catholics over time. So you need to make lots of young ones and compel them to stay in the religion, so you have numbers.
Judeo-Christian has been usurped by like PragerU and Ben Shapiro, and it's been weaponized. It's been weaponized to be anti people of color, and it's one of those things where hatred from this country has spread over, and people kind of use it now. It's kind of an exclusionary term now.
And what really bothers me is when there is a lot of, I'm going to use the term latent Christianity. What that basically means is leftover things from when people were Christian or from having a Christian culture that people that were built in as part of the religion that are problematic that people should get rid of. Like hell belief is the big one. How a lot of non-believers will really struggle with hell belief for years after they come out of Christianity or Islam. And it can also be things like presuming that humans are automatically better than animals is a big one that I've seen recently. But it can also be things as simple as assuming a patriarchy.
Interesting thing about hell is the Bible doesn't really mention hell. It mentions in Revelations that the souls that don't bow down and worship God and accept God at the end of times will be thrown into a burning pit.
Yeah.
But there is no mention of hell in and of itself.
What was that, Matt?
Yeah.
I was just going to say, I think it was more the apocryphal texts.
So
not the canonized. Generally speaking, canonized.
The early apocrypha didn't tend to have as much written about that. Even most of our modern ideas about hell come from the Apocalypse of Peter and the Divine Comedy.
Yeah.
Like, can we just say that, they actually had a whole council where they decided what was going to go into the Bible?
The Council of Nicaea.
And the King James Version is specifically that, King James's version of the Bible. And even before that, there was a nice big council where they got together all the religious leaders, all the religious
church decided what it did and didn't want based on its doctrine.
There were more than one council, and we're going to be clear about that.
There were the councils and the creeds.
I'm just saying, anybody who is a literalist who believes the book was shot out the sky as the inerrant word of God. I mean,
the inerrant shit of God.
Use your brain. Just the whiteification of Jesus in general is incredibly fucking offensive. He was not a fucking blonde hair, blue-eyed white. He did not look like me. Okay, no fucking way.
Maybe he did, Kitty, because let's face it, he only had a mum. So he must have had XX chromosomes.
It's totally legit. He could have been a trans man, I will give you that one. But we might have shared, a gender, but or sex,
a sex,
I guess
not a gender.
But no, it would not. He would not have looked like me. As far as the skin, the eyes, the hair.
No.
Aryan Jesus is just nope. We just get rid of that whole fucking Caesar Borgia or what the fuck.
It's another form of control, though. It's another form of control. Look at that guy. He's above you. It's
not just that. It makes him more relatable because it's we're in God's image. It's not just God is a exalted form of human and we're made in God's image. No, it is literally meant for the WAS, the white Anglo-Saxon Protestants that were this Jesus I can relate to. They're not going to relate to a fucking brown-skinned Jewish transient that gave away free healthcare like fucking commie bastard he was. No, they're not going to relate to that. They're literally looking to have a savior that looks like them. That's why white Jesus is so central to the evangelicals, especially. It's white Jesus with an American flag, an eagle, and an AK-47. That is Republicanity. It is that unholy mix of Republican and Christianity, and it's fucking disgusting.
I mean, yeah, that's one form of maybe evangelical, but I mean, that you may or may not see in the South. There's a lot of people in the North that believe that Jesus would have been a brown man, and they still worship him and love him, nonetheless. But yeah, I think kind of what Kitty's talking to, it's the and actually, I remember I've heard this a lot too. It's like, there's this part of your brain where there's your sense of morals and morality, and then there's of yourself and then of others, and then it's like, well, where's your religion? It's more along those lines of where your own morality is, like almost, the exact same location, really. And people appropriate those intentions. And impose them onto others, and this is why you get a different form of Christianity for every Christian you meet.
Well, we have a Catholic traditionalist in the chat trying to talk about pedophilia.
Yeah, I'm happy to have a go.
Hold on 1 second. I want to.
Here's a good question.
Because I'm the real life Sanford and Son. Kitty, there's Jesus. There's the AK-47, and there's Jesus. This is an action figure. Because I live in America, this is a Jesus action figure.
Jesus action figure.
And the thing you need is a Buddy Christ.
He has camo pants and everything. He comes with the helmet and everything.
All right, I love that.
What is he holding?
Sorry,
a pigeon and an AK-47.
Yeah.
I do
There's
actually
AK tucked.
I do want to say something. The Catholic traditionalist in the chat. So, here's my justification for why pedophilia is wrong. Because children cannot consent. Okay. Right. Any type of sex act that does not occur between consenting adults is immoral. It is wrong.
It is rape.
You do not need a book to tell you. You don't need divine revelation or anything like that. If you are not consenting to the act, it is wrong. It is immoral. And children cannot consent. Period.
Right. Well, it's simply the harm principle that children cannot actually project the potential consequences. So they are being harmed by the act because they don't understand what could result from it.
Right. That's very good.
Yeah, and this is, hopefully I can bring a few ideas together. And this is why I think sometimes the means do justify the ends, at least when you're forming beliefs, is we're talking about a lot of the consequences that come out of this, a lot of individual ideas that people hold. But the basis behind all of it is the scaffold on which you form these beliefs, on which you place them. If your scaffold is broken, if your scaffold is wrong, then things that are more harmful than incorrect facts about the world, about reality, can be stuck to it. And the main thing here, the main thing I want to bring up is not individual things about slavery or individual things about why this thing might cause harm, but that basis for how you form your beliefs. And not just your beliefs, and this is also all the way back to the beginning line, like science is about that critical thinking and about analyzing everything. A lot of people miss that. But it's that scaffold of, okay, how do I take this idea and analyze it? And from that, if you've got people who are trying to condition you to believe in hell or you're going to do horrible things, yes, I agree there are people who probably should keep that belief. But most people, it's harmful because that scaffold is wrong. You can add other things to it that will do a lot of damage to the person and those around them. To go back to Kitty's thing, you can imagine what her ex's belief system was. If the scaffold is broken, you can have some horrible things on it. And so it goes back to making sure we try and educate as many people as possible about how to think, not what to think, but how do you come to a conclusion? How do you take the evidence in front of you and get there? And I think a few others of you have kind of brought that up. I mean, when Sam was talking about the Council of Nicaea, the original meaning, it's because in that scaffold, it's, here's what we've been told about it, but how do we actually look further? How do we analyze whether this is correct? We go back to the original, what does this say? And I think most people, the majority of humans, have the ability to do that, but they have not been taught, they do not have the resources to get access to that. A lot of people around the world don't. And so
a lot of people,
that's why I think the means will definitely justify, don't always. So the ends don't always justify the means. I think we have to look at those means. How do we get to from A to B? Because even if the person doesn't end up agreeing with you, if you've made them think, if you've made them analyze what's going on behind the scenes, then maybe in the future they'll make a better decision somewhere else. And so as much as people can debate all day about individual items, you have to focus on that scaffold. So going back then to Catholic traditionalists as well, no, there is no such thing as absolute truths.
No one said that.
My opinion, you can't be, because even if you have a religion that is saying it's the absolute truth and you believe that, you're still a human. And humans can be wrong. We can make mistakes. We all do. I've made plenty.
I'm glad you addressed that, because I'm getting my boot out.
I know, right?
I'm getting my boot. I'm getting my boot
and
out.
And that's where I'm going. So, sorry, is that it is about how do we scaffold these beliefs on. So to CT's original question about how do we assess these, well, we have to look back, how do we figure out whether something's right or wrong? So you can look at well-being, you can look at the harm form. You don't need anything other than that. So no, there's no absolutes, but if you're confusing that with an objective about how we can show that there will be physical harm taken from certain actions, then I'm not as fussed about the individual case as I am about the process that surrounds it. So in this case, because children can't give consent, informed consent, they can't understand the consequences, then it is quite easy to see how harm will come from that, particularly the younger the children are.
And contrary to what Catholic tradition has said, that does not make it an absolute truth. It just makes it the right thing to do.
I'd like to also nip something in the bud that I can see going to probably come from Catholic traditionalists.
Well, they're waiting now because
when you
Will has...
I have to go to I'll be right back.
No worries. So the thing with all of these questions of absolutes is that it comes right down to epistemology, and the standard response here is going to be, well, if it's not absolute, why does it matter? Well, nothing is absolute, including the Catholic knowledge of the Christian God according to epistemology, at which point it would not matter by your own standard. So it's as absolute as anything can be from an atheistic standpoint, and I say that as a religious person.
And to point out, to second that, is that, we want to bring this back to, say, like the scientific process. It's not trying to get to absolutes, but it is about trying to get as sure as you possibly can. So if you take the claim, whether is the Earth flat? Well, science is pretty damn sure on that. Can I say that absolutely in a pure philosophical sense? No, I cannot say that absolutely the Earth isn't flat. But again, you'll be pretty damn sure. Saying it's not absolute does not mean that we don't have a good idea of whether it's right or wrong.
I'm just waiting for science to find a way to make vampires so I can become one.
Oh,
that will be very fun.
Yeah, but do you really want to be drinking blood, Kitty? Come on.
You have the wrong scientist here. You have, I'm more the scientist that once you become a vampire, that I point out that moonlight is just reflected sunlight, so you can't go out in the moonlight either.
Well, how about him? Well, all right. You're the type of scientist that could maybe make me an Archimedes death laser, maybe.
This is what I was saying at the beginning. Lasers are not a good weapon. You can aim weapons with them, but if you're going to make a doomsday weapon, I can come up with 1,000 better ideas than using a laser.
I just, some
could make you a really good railgun, though, Kitty.
Just a little bit.
I could make you a really good railgun.
Yes, Kitty. I'm reminded of the song. Why aren't lasers doing cool shit?
Now, if money, if you can spare if you have no problem with money, you could hire a prosthodontist to build some teeth for you that have little holes in them that can actually connect to something to suck blood out, and you can do the whole vampire thing and seem totally legit.
Yeah.
But that's going to be really expensive. I don't think they'd want to do that. You'd have to find the right guy for it.
Hold that thought.
Oh.
What have you got, Kitty?
Looking at prosthodontists now.
I don't think it'd be that hard to find somebody to make the teeth for you.
Vampire
imagine in
teeth.
LA there'd be
We're gonna get a display of some wicked teeth here. Holy cow! Now that actually looks pretty sharp.
Those are awesome.
Yeah.
Those are awesome.
Those are cool. I like that.
Awesome.
What did I?
The only problem she has is she keeps smiling while she's and laughing. Vampires don't laugh. They smile, but they don't
They
laugh.
do whilst they're sucking your blood out and you're dying. That, you know,
They
they're
smile when they
sadists,
see a
remember?
food source.
Haven't you watched Buffy? Vampires laugh.
Kitty, you've
I mean,
got to go
look-
look for this. Yep.
I guess there are worse deaths than dying while you're being sucked. So
Hey, people pay a lot of money to die that way.
Okay, think of it this way: you have, something extending, some penetration, some fluid exchange. Vampires have always been about sex. Okay, vampires are sexy. Might have a little bit of a fetish, like
Even in the 50s.
I'm gonna own it. But like, I would love to be a vampire. I would be an avenging angel vampire, though. Like, I would only take from people that consent to it, or like rapists and pedophiles. I don't think anybody would care if they just like dropped off the face of the earth.
Okay, the question I always have about vampires is, supposedly they can't enter your house unless they're invited. But if you've got a mat in front of the door that says welcome, does that count as an invitation?
Oh, that's a good one.
I would argue personally, yes, unless there is any indication you would not be welcome, because it's an implicit welcome.
I live in LA. We don't have our maps don't say welcome. They say listeners go away.
You lost your LA privileges. That's what they should say. The Pulp Fiction reference.
Vampires don't have to use condoms because they can't come without permission, or they can't come inside without permission.
They can't come inside without permission.
Oh boy.
It's
Writing
a
that
Jen's
one
dream.
down.
I can get away with it.
Now that's got a cartoon attached to it, hasn't it? With the vampire on top going, "Can I come yet?"
Probably.
Could I
But
come
no, I
in
got
yet?
these for Halloween, actually, because I was a vampire for Halloween. And I actually hung on to them because it took forever. I had to sit there one tooth at a time for like 20 minutes with my head tipped back so that I didn't get any saliva on them while the gum was attaching, because it's basically like a paste that you make, and then it caps over your tooth. I can drink with it, I can vape with it, I can talk with it, just can't eat with it because it's not a super solid fit.
Yeah, spirit gum used in theatrical makeup.
Catholic traditionalist.
Cool.
I give you respect because you came back. Because if someone timed me out, I would have left in a childish rage.
yeah,
So I give you
No,
respect.
Jen,
for that.
Jen, I have to say this. 2 seconds. You have the most adorable.
This one's
pet-
for you, Kitty.
I love it. I love it.
Jen, you have the most adorable pet troll. Like he's like absolutely like brain dead.
The kitty thing wouldn't be so funny if it wasn't for the fact that I've got 2 punctures on my wrist from playing with Sloth Girl's cat a couple hours ago.
All right, does anybody want to put the kibosh on this like absolute truth shit? Because it's getting old.
So we've had multiple responses in chat from me and Matt being like, we dealt with this bullshit a minute ago. Keep up.
Yeah.
I don't. No. You answered the question, but nobody's like talking about absolute truth and why atheists don't believe in it.
Yeah, I don't believe in it as a religious person because epistemologically you cannot disprove the hard question of solipsism. You have to pragmatically assume that is not the case.
That's a presupposition, and we all have them.
And we have properly basic beliefs, and as such, nothing physically can be absolute.
Can you give an example of a properly basic belief?
Yeah, sure. A properly basic belief would be that I have consciousness or that reality exists.
Well, I don't really see even where the question of absolute truth comes into morality. Because basically my morals are based on the idea that to function in a society, I can't do anything to another member of the group that I wouldn't want someone to do to me.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
This is where
Why
it
do you
comes
need
down to is
anything
one of
more
the
than that?
decent things in the Bible, but it's not of the Bible. It's predates that, is the golden rule. do unto others as you want them to do unto you. But it is probably the only moralistic thing that's in there. And yet
Actually,
even that fails at a
Golden
certain
Rule has-
point, because
the
if
Golden-
you're somebody who doesn't care what people does to you, you could do whatever you damn well like to anybody else.
Well, the golden rule is problematic.
I agree.
Yeah, in many ways, and in a straight relationship, in the bedroom, there's different ways that the men and the women prefer to be treated. The golden rule doesn't work there.
Yeah.
The golden rule doesn't work in lots of places.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
falls
Yeah.
apart for introverts.
I'm pretty sure there are things that I have
Yeah,
no
you wouldn't
problem.
want to treat a rigger like a
Other-
rope bunny, and you wouldn't want to treat a rope bunny like a rigger.
But I mean, for
Right, that one
introverts,
down
it falls
too.
apart because most of the time I would rather people just pretend I wasn't there. But if I do that to other people, they think I'm being rude.
Yeah. I can think of many things people can do to me that I definitely should not go around doing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think that goes
that
to
is
my
valid.
list.
Yeah, so
And
it
you
all
can
comes
also
back
bring
to
that
the
on a more
question of
serious note as
consent.
well.
You know, it's not doing anything you don't think the person would consent to.
The golden rule should be this:
Yeah.
do unto others as they would have you do unto them. Treat people how they want to be treated.
I always
Yeah,
think
that's
don't be a dick.
Yeah, don't be a dick.
Even in
Golden rule is don't be a dick.
So
How about that?
what you just mentioned there, Kitty, actually has a name. It's called the Platinum Rule, and it's better but still not perfect.
Yeah, the platinum rule is more kind of staying out of things rather than getting into things, but it does suffer from. Sam's right. It does suffer from some of the same problems the golden rule does.
Well, here's the
Yeah.
thing: perfection is impossible.
Yes.
Like, there's no such thing
Sure.
as perfect. In fact,
Yeah.
that's actually what one of the things that got me out of my religious beliefs. It wasn't actually the hell concept; it was heaven. And the reason why was, if I go to heaven and my child is in hell, I wouldn't be in paradise. Now, the way to get around that would be either I have no memory of my life, so I wouldn't know my child, and then what was the point of living it? Or I would have a fake version of my child, so some Matrix shit, and I don't want that either. I would rather...
Or you have your emotions removed so you don't care. And then you're still
or
not
that,
you.
and then I wouldn't be me. So
Exactly.
any iteration of that where, I am me with my memories, I am who I am. If I am in heaven and my child is suffering eternally, there is no paradise there for me. And
Yep.
that was one of the things that got me out of religion.
Well, for me too, that was the problem with heaven, is it is logically impossible. Because what my brother would consider heaven includes me being there with him every day and listening to his bullshit, which for me would be eternal torture.
Yeah,
So there is no version of heaven that he and I could coexist in.
it's definitely
Yeah.
unobtainable
Yeah.
perfection. It's
Yeah.
damn.
And if
Yeah, see what?
Because utopia is
What
impossible
was-
because we all have different ideals.
And if you look at
Great Doctor Who storyline, though.
if you
Look
look
for
at the
utopia.
versions of heaven in religions that actually describe what it is, you can tell that it was clearly written by very rich men, very powerful men in the society.
Yep.
And also, it just doesn't sound that good. But for me, I found it was a bit different because I was very fortunate that I didn't really have anyone close to me that was pushing strongly the idea of hell. Hell was for bad people, not necessarily just because you didn't conform. And so if you wanted to be a good person, that was generally enough. So it made my life a lot easier for that. So I'm very grateful for that. But it was just more of, I slowly came to realize that it was just no evidence. And then the other beliefs fell away. But right before towards the end, when I was still religious, I kind of viewed it as like then you can find out everything about the universe. It wasn't like a physical place. It was very difficult to describe, but I had an almost deistic view of Christianity because I was like, if there's a God that powerful who can do all these things, couldn't he just start the universe and not have to touch it again?
Oh, yeah.
That's a great question.
Yeah. Well,
I mean,
and that
if you've got an all-powerful God, then you can't have free will, but Christianity relies on people having free will because otherwise the concept of punishment just means
Well,
God.
yeah,
God
like,
basically having a circle jerk all
I
about
have
his
a-
little fictional
I have a
characters.
question. If you're all powerful, why would you want to control human beings? I wouldn't care.
Yeah.
Like, if you're all powerful, why would you? I've had that question since I was a little kid. You know, why would you want to? You know, I wouldn't care.
Christian God is an abusive spouse.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh
No,
yeah.
and literally,
Oh, yeah.
wanting to control every aspect, wanting to be deified, worshipped, treated like, you know, it basically, when something bad happens, oh, it's God's will. When something good happens, oh, praise God. What fucking abusive spouse wouldn't want their partner in that mindset?
A narcissistic one.
Absolutely. You know, it's funny you'd say that. There's somebody that always, still to this day, jabs me with a "Oh, God bless" or "Oh, God willing," and
let's. May I just, so Catholic traditionalist is back, and I just want to try and nip this in, but please don't. No, wait.
Wait, don't time him out yet.
I want to try and address this. I want to see what their response is. So
you show
again,
me the question?
for however many times I've,
No,
do you want me to read it?
Yeah, read
go
it
right
out.
ahead.
Okay, so it's like Jen's little corner. None of you have answered my question. Again, is your claim that there's no absolute truth and absolute truth? If so, it defeats your claim. If not, it defeats your claim. No, that is wrong.
A false dichotomy, that.
One, there is no absolute. I don't believe in absolute truth, because quite demonstrably humans can be wrong. We get things wrong all the time, and there is no difference in your brain as to when you're right and wrong until you find out later. So this idea, and the thing is, I don't need to believe in absolute truth to still come to pretty sure conclusions.
Yeah.
And that was the whole point of what we were pointing out earlier, is that it's about how do we build a scaffold to put these beliefs on. I don't need absolute truth anywhere. The whole basis for my scaffold is that everything is tentative. That's why I love science. You can constantly trying to improve on it. Someone points out to me that I'm wrong, I won't be happy at the time, but I'll be thankful for it later. If you can prove me wrong, I'll change. So, with all this in mind, why would we need absolute truth to believe anything? We don't.
Exactly. Yeah.
No.
It's
I can
not
come
relevant
to
to the
pretty sure
question.
conclusions, and I might be 99.99999% sure. That
Ponderance of evidence is not the same as absolute truth.
Yeah.
We don't
Epistemology
deal in
does not
absolute truth.
necessitate
We
ontology.
deal with the ponderance of evidence.
Yes. So again, coming back to what I was saying earlier, I am not absolutely sure that the Earth isn't flat. But I'm pretty damn sure it's not flat. And that is how you can put absolute truth in there if you want. Godless Catholic traditionalists. I'm not sure what I'm missing, but
I'm not
So,
absolutely
what
sure that
I-
exist.
what I think he's saying is that it would appear to be contradictory to say it's absolutely true. There's no absolute truth, but
none of
that
us
is
said that.
actually. So the only way I can see that he might have come to the conclusion we were saying that is the fact that I'm saying that there is no way to know ontology, and that from an epistemological standpoint that is objectively true. But that would then be a category error because you're trying to talk about ontology, whereas I'm saying epistemologically, there is no way to know that.
Yeah.
Oh, Christian apologetics just drive me insane.
This is a problem where you
They're
have
reading a
people
script,
talking
though.
about
Apparently
philosophy
it
who
drives
don't
them
actually
and me
understand
too.
philosophy.
They go to school. They go to these fake schools to read scripts, or they get their little diploma mill to read these scripts. It's tiresome after a while.
yeah. So
Yeah.
If your religion needs apologists, I think you need to examine your religion.
Always thought that. I agree,
Yeah.
Purple. Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely.
there are no scientist apologists. Or science communicators.
Right.
Science
But the thing is,
apologists. Oh,
again,
that's
most like in Australia, most religious people, because the majority of the country is still religious, will acknowledge science. So they have to put it in there somewhere. So most people have the ability to analyze things critically, even if not everything they have is critically analyzed. And you can do that without absolute truth. But for me, I'm not a big philosophical person. I have no problem listening to people debate the philosophical basis. But for me, it comes back down to, again, I don't believe in absolute truth, evidence. I am a scientist. You can have the perfect logical argument, and I will sit there and go, okay, what do we do now?
I'm the same way. I'm tactile.
So how do we show that it's correct? And so you need to bring that evidence. But if you can show me further evidence that shows that our conclusions of the original set of evidence is wrong, go for it. So, and I can think of so many cases where that's happened in science, because I still do it. I need to, because otherwise the next few years of my life are going to be a waste of time.
Well, I mean,
I'm very much a pragmatist. If you can't show me some practical application for it, I'm really not interested in the discussion at all.
Not necessarily practical. Just like, can you show me evidence for it? Because the problem I have with pure pragmatism is that you don't always know how useful something's going to be. One of my favorite cases, and I know Neil deGrasse Tyson has always pointed this out too, is a similar line, is the 1917 paper on the emission of radiation. I can't remember the exact title, but it was a paper published back in the second last year of World War I by Albert Einstein.
Spontaneous emission of radiation.
Yes.
Yeah, I know it starts off that way, and I can't remember how.
43 years later, the information, the theory in that paper, after many decades of research, gave us the first visible laser.
Yeah.
In 1960, that was super expensive.
Spontaneous emission of radiation by stimulated
diode lasers.
Yeah.
And now every building has a laser in it somewhere.
Yeah.
I would argue for a form of pure pragmatism, but the best term I've come up with it, because I've not checked scientific papers, or not scientific papers, philosophical papers, for an actual definition of this, but I like something that I'm going to for now refer to as like abstract pragmatism.
I'm sorry.
Because
oh, Godless, are you trying to bring the chat up again?
No, I'm about to boot. I'm about to boot.
Yeah, seriously.
We are way past talking about paedophilia. It's not relevant to the conversation anymore, Catholic traditionalists. And we've already answered this, so kindly and ultimately fuck off.
Yeah, can I just add something to it? We address it. Not one person here said it was right. I think every person I can remember at the time that said something said it was wrong.
Yeah.
And gave their reason for it. And gave their moral reason for it.
Yep. And so
we were unanimously
and that's why
please address what we actually say.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. The whole thing with pragmatism is, I think pure pragmatism can work so long as you're willing to abstract things out, because if you say, I acknowledge that scientific studies that seem pointless can be useful, it is then pragmatically useful to study all areas of science.
Oh yeah. No, I'm not arguing against that. I'm not arguing against, studies acquiring knowledge.
Oh yeah, that was more my response to Matt saying that the issue with pragmatism is that you don't always know something's usefulness. My argument would be that all gaining of knowledge, it should therefore be treated as useful, because that is the most useful approach.
Yeah,
I was just
quite happy
I was
with
going
the
to the thing
take of
about
science or science.
I was going to the thing about absolute truths, and for me, I cannot see any way that it affects my life one way or another, whether absolute truths exist or not.
How would you, to ask you a completely novice question, how would you notice the difference?
Well, that's what I mean.
So the answer is, the answer, Will, is that you wouldn't really, and so that's why it is reserved for the realms of the philosophers, cough nerds just like me, and Randolph to some extent, I guess.
Yeah, but you could prove it either way, and it's not going to affect anything I'm going to do when I wake up in the morning.
Exactly. That's my whole point.
I live my life as if it's the only one I'm going to have. I want to leave the world just a little bit better than it was when I entered it. Like, absolutely. I mean, that's literally it. That's the goal. do
And
good.
I think
for
that should be
people
the golden
because it's
rule
the right
for
thing to
everyone.
do.
Yeah,
Leave the
this
world a
life
little bit
is the
better
only
than it
thing
was
we
when you
have
entered
solid
it.
evidence for. So if we make the most of this, and there isn't anything else, we've lived a good life.
Absolutely.
If we live a good life and there is something beyond this, that's just a bonus.
I mean, that's
So
actually
it doesn't hurt us either way.
one of my biggest issues with Christianity and Islam is the fact that it does end up coming down to a bit of a death cult, like where you don't worry about this life doesn't matter. Richard, baby, stop.
Yeah, that this life is just a
and
rehearsal.
it's just a stepping stone for your afterlife, and it's a waste. And like you were saying, and I've posed this to theists multiple times, where I'm just like, look, here's something we can agree on. You cannot be sure, like there is no proof that there is an afterlife for you. Whether you believe in one or not is irrelevant to the point. The only thing you have evidence for is the current life you have right here and now.
Well, the belief in the afterlife also is a good way to exonerate yourself. To say, oh, I'll get him in the next lifetime, or oh, I'll do better next lifetime. It's just a good way to lie.
Procrastination.
Yeah, I think that the best attitude towards an afterlife is the position of an agnostic, even for a religious person, because and it's the way I hold it is that I do not know what is after this life. I have no way to prove either way, and so if there is, I will be pleasantly surprised.
See, this is why I don't have a problem with people actually having a faith, as long as you don't try to instill your faith upon other people and you don't make other people live by your rules. Society rules are different, but your rules as a religion should not be instilled upon other people.
You know,
I think it's perfectly fine for somebody to have a faith. That's fine. Whatever floats your boat, whatever keeps you on the straight and narrow, whatever makes it worthwhile for you to live this life. But live this life. Concentrate on living this life.
Actually, I don't think that whatever keeps you on the straight and narrow is a good enough standard.
Matt, do you have something? Matt, are you?
I think I was going to say something similar.
Oh, sorry,
Matt.
You go, then I'll add on.
Sorry to cut you off right
Go
now.
ahead, Matt.
Oh, thanks. So I was just going to, I think I was going to end up saying a similar thing. So for Jen's one is about that. Most religious beliefs, most people who would describe themselves as a person of faith, the religious belief is such that if you do think it's true, you want your beliefs to be pushed on everyone else. You want everyone else to hold the same thing. So yes, if it was possible that you could guarantee that they wouldn't try and push it on anyone else, and I probably was one of those people that said I was very close to being a deist for a Christian towards the end of it, then that's okay, but there's a lot that aren't.
Yeah,
and I can kind of understand it. That's why I think that it's a, whilst I agree with the sentiment, I think it's a bit harder in reality to get it.
I don't think it is. Most people are not like that.
I think that the thing I would push for there would be pluralism, which is mostly indistinguishable from secularism, but slightly different, which is what most atheists I've spoken to hold, which is basically we will mutually agree that we do not use our religious beliefs or lack thereof as a justification for anything in society.
Yeah.
How does secularism not do that?
No, it does, and so in practical terms, it's almost indistinguishable. It's just that there's a slight difference in wording of how you'd look at it, almost. So secularism would be taking religion out of it, but pluralism would be leaving religion in it and just agreeing that it should not affect interpersonal connections beyond religious gatherings and what have you.
Well, actually, I have a big problem with bringing religion into government, so I side with the secularism side there.
Yeah.
Because it's found to be problematic in government affairs.
Because which religion?
So the thing with pluralism is that pluralism would ban any religion then trying to push anything because of religion, so religion would by proxy be kept out of government specifically.
Just like secularism, there's no difference there then.
Yeah.
Precisely, and that's why I said it's pretty much indistinguishable.
I mean, like, for me, I have an issue in my country how, they have prayer, like, before, like, the inauguration, swearing in on a Bible or Quran or what have you. Like, It is just ways that religion is creeping more and more into our government. And I mean, it's always been there, but there are those that are pushing more for a Christian theocracy, but not just any Christian theocracy. They want their brand of Christianity. And
I don't get why politicians aren't sworn in on the constitution of the country, because that's what they're meant to be upholding, not a religious text.
But it's pushing it's pushing the Christian narrative, though.
It is.
That's
but you should be. You're swearing to uphold the Constitution. Swear on the fucking Constitution of the country you're putting for.
I agree. Yeah.
I mean, Marjorie Greene, that crazy QAnon bitch, like she, before she was elected and was spouting off all this nonsense about how it's illegal to be sworn in on the Quran when there were Muslims that were being sworn into Congress. And it's like, no, that's not illegal because there's no religious test to hold office. That's in the Constitution.
Yeah.
Her platform is hatred, though. Her entire platform is based on, I don't like those people, and no matter what they do, they're going to be wrong.
It sums up my biggest issue with religion. It's like, I don't care what an individual believes on their own. And my thing is, your religious beliefs should end at the tip of your nose. They should have no influence on the people around you in any way. Unfortunately, that's not the world we live in. It's like, on paper, communism seems like a great system because everybody's taken care of. However, put that into practice and it all falls apart.
Well, whoa. Like, by rights, any system can fall apart under a dictator, period.
Yeah.
I don't like saying that, communism, socialism. Things either work or they don't. And I hate the labels when it comes, because it's dividing us even more right now, especially like Republicans, in Florida. What I'm hearing is that, a lot of the reason that people didn't vote for Biden is because there was this commie socialist, rhetoric going on about him.
The Cubans in Miami are what swung it for Trump because they are worried about Castro and
he was being painted as a socialist. And let's just forget he's not a socialist. Why are we so afraid of socialism?
So I wish
Castro?
You have it here in Canada, and socialism works quite well here.
I speak Spanish. I wish that Biden was a socialist.
So I speak Spanish fluently, and they've been calling him a socialist for a while now.
Yeah.
Some people are paying a lot of money to push that into Hispanic, the Hispanic community.
For Florida, because
didn't work in California.
The thing is people constantly are conflating socialism and communism. Sure, communism falls under the socialist umbrella. It is a type of socialism, but it is not the only type of socialism. Democratic socialism, having a social democracy where you have a mixed economy and you have strong social safety net programs. The citizens are taken care of.
Hello, Australia.
You have capitalism. And here's the thing. I go even further than Bernie on issues. I am very far left. I'm also libertarian. I think that you should have autonomy and be able to do whatever the fuck you want with your own body. It's your body. So if, I believe in, physician-assisted suicide. If you are terminal, you don't want to suffer anymore, you should be able to do that. You want to transition, you should be able to do that. You want an abortion, you should be able to do that. It is your fucking body. Nobody should be able to tell you what you can and cannot do with what is yours, because that is the one thing in this world that you have absolute claim over, or should.
So
drugs too. I don't care. You want to do drugs, fine. However, don't get behind the wheel of a car and then put other people in danger. It's as long as you're not hurting anybody else, do whatever the fuck you want.
So you just described California. You just described the laws. Those are all the laws here.
But I go further than that. I go further than that because I think that a government has a fundamental responsibility to its citizens, and there should be a baseline below which you cannot fall. Meaning we should have no children going hungry, no people homeless. Everybody should have their basic needs of food, shelter, healthcare. Those need to be met for everybody. I support a UBI.
I agree that the government should guarantee a minimum standard of living.
Exactly. Like, and you don't have to be living high on the hog, you know, like champagne and caviar. That is, no, nobody fucking cares about that. Nobody actually wants that. But, I mean, other places that have tried it, they have found that it is actually more cost effective to put the homeless up in apartments and get them counseling as opposed to just tossing them in the drunk tank constantly.
Absolutely.
We're in the process of putting those kinds of things in place now in the cities around me in Canada here, and
Fucking God
it's.
bless Canada.
And the problem is, though, we have all these evangelicals. We have all these evangelicals pushing against it. They have this attitude that all those poor people need to pull up their boots and find a job, and a lot of them have mental issues. They need help.
Yeah, I think it's a ridiculous statistic for homeless people. It's something like, is it 8 out of 10? 7 or 8 out of 10 homeless people suffer from a severe mental illness.
Oh yeah,
I would believe that.
Yeah.
That's why it's like even in Sydney there are quite a few homeless people about. But in Australia, if you have half your wits about you, you can get government assisted housing. You can get there's no physical reason you should be on the streets in Australia. People do because a lot of them can't. They don't have it. But of course those things get stigmatized. So yeah, I do believe that there should be a fallback. And yes, I guess that's the Australian and the Canadian would be like, yay, helping each other work.
Yeah,
together.
it's an epidemic.
Can it
Homelessness.
invade, please? Like, can you guys just take over? Like, I would much rather the United States of Canada, you know, because
Canadians are way too polite.
You won't be allowed to be a state here. You'll have to be a province or territory. But I think people would be okay with that.
United Provinces of Canada.
We would just be Canada. The name's non-negotiable.
A rose
I
by another name.
The
I
United
watch
States
hockey.
of Canada.
I watch a lot of hockey. I watch a lot of hockey, so I wouldn't mind.
I feel like the US
You'd
is
all be
just
welcome here.
great.
Well, would you just leave off the Bible Belt states altogether and just say the?
I don't think they want to join Canada. We're too socialist for them anyway.
This is what I will do.
Right.
I will build a giant space laser and I will just carve the southern
them out,
states.
yeah.
Will it be a Jewish space laser?
Why don't you get a Jewish one? give America its own circumcision.
I'm not judging.
Fair
The space
warning,
laser can be
because
run
I'm
by
in
anyone.
one of the southern states, so
Yeah.
I'm in Florida. So if you're gonna cut Florida off of the rest, just give me a little heads up, honey.
I want to say something really quick. I talk a lot of trash about the southern states, and being from the West Coast, I just want to say I went there, and it's just as scary as people say it is.
While you're talking about Florida there, Kitty,
I've had a
I just want to get everyone's reaction about a certain Floridian leaving Twitter because apparently she was harassed by an awful lot of us.
Well, could I just say, could we actually have a
Caitlin
could we
Bennett.
hold-
No.
no. Could we hold a moment of silent prayer for SJ?
No.
For
No,
SJ's
no, 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 no.
Because that
No
Twitter
prayer
account
here.
That
SJ
Randolph, that Twitter account died for our sins.
After SJ appearing on mine and
Vicarious redemption is unethical. Don't you dare put that on me.
after SJ appearing on mine
Randolph is my
and
lawyer.
and Will's show last week, she decided that it was time that she went on a rant about abortion and trans people.
Absolutely.
To which the entire
Who's this?
community then tore her a new one. I even offered to have her on my channel so
After-
I could prove
after
her
we had
wrong on
who
the bullshit she was
SJ.
saying.
After
Oh,
SJ,
Esther
after,
Thompson.
after
She
we
doesn't
had-
like me because I'm pro-abortion right to the end of the third trimester.
we had
So-
we had a positive conversation, and she turned around and
And
you
then
know,
shat on
did what
us.
she did. Yeah.
Literally shat on us afterwards.
But to her
She
face,
blocked me
she was
because of
nice.
my opinion on that.
Oh yeah, she was lovely to us and then turned around and shat on us.
She was absolute joy to be around. I have nothing but absolute joy. Like most people are. Most people would not act ugly to your face. You know.
I'm actually
My mirror says otherwise.
So
Kitty,
yeah,
when you look at a
basi-
mirror, what do you see? Because you're a vampire. I'm curious.
Oh, I see me. Like, that's a myth of my kind.
Okay.
Like, hey, my family, my dad's side, he's actually first generation American. My grandmother, great aunt, and great grandmother actually survived Hitler's camps. and immigrated here. But they're from Lithuania, so it's not quite Romania, but it's close enough. Like
almost Romania.
No, I thought you were going to say first generation vampire.
I know, right?
If you're from Lithuania, are you
you
just a vampire with a lisp?
My dad has actually like been pronounced dead multiple times and come back like fucking Wolverine. So like there might be something to that whole vampire thing.
You've got a case for it. You might need to see that prosthodontist soon.
There's nothing wrong with the lisp, even vampires with the lisp. I still can't pronounce marriage.
Honestly, until I was a teenager, I could not say cinnamon. I would always like cinnamon, like I would get stuck on it, and I couldn't say.
Yeah, it's a common problem up here for young people.
Cinnamon or cinnamon?
Maple syrup.
Maple syrup. I love maple syrup. If I ever moved to Canada, that would be one of the best things about it. I love maple syrup. I will have maple syrup on toast.
Well, the bartenders here are trained to keep you from getting drunk on it, so they'll make sure you don't go over your limit.
No, I would be in Canada right now if they would let me in.
I've been promoting this plan for years.
I could tell you the list.
I've been promoting this plan for years, that we're going to set up a refugee camp in Minnesota, so everybody from the southern states who wants to comes up here. And once you're all here, then we get Canada to annex the upper Midwest.
Well, Canada's on board with this. It's no problem. We'll certainly accept a new province.
Canada would take Washington, Oregon, and California.
I was about to say.
Take a big loop and take the West and the North.
No,
Massachusetts, New York, Canada would take those two.
No,
I'm
okay with that. I'm okay with that as long as you're all okay with free health care, better education, gun control.
All we've been saying.
Oh, the horror.
All right, we're all talking over the top of each other. Let's.
You know what's really
have
funny?
all those things waiting for us. That's all I'm saying.
We want to take Alaska back one day, but people are asking what's taking so long, and I always say, we're just waiting for Sarah Palin to leave.
Oh, okay.
Randall, you had me at health coverage.
Yeah, honestly, if you guys took over Alaska, it would actually solve a lot of their problems, because they have massive problems in Alaska.
Oh yeah,
and healthcare would solve a lot of them.
Wow.
I don't want to get into it because it would bring the stream down, but
our taxes here, personal income tax in Canada is a bit higher than the U.S., but with all the benefits, I think it's worth it.
I'm aware of the higher tax rate, but the fact that all the medical stuff would be covered, I think, completely offsets that.
Exactly.
So here I am not being misleading about how good Canada is. We have higher taxes.
All right, I'm going to take control for a second.
Just on what I pay the doctors and for prescriptions.
I'm going to try and take control for a second.
Tax.
Go ahead, Jen.
Sorry,
your turn.
Okay. No, I'm gonna let Jeannie and Jeff have a say, because they've come in. Jeff said one thing. Jeannie's been trying to say something, and they've only sort of just joined us, and we are all talking over the top of each other. So, Jeannie, you were trying to say something a moment ago.
I forgot, but the more important thing was that I think that the U.S. is just afraid of socialism is because they don't want to be Canada, and I think that's why.
Absolutely.
They know Canada is better, and I think
my understanding is that a lot of people conflate it with communism, and they're very different things.
It goes back to the Red Scare and J. Edgar Hoover and the space race, and basically when you had Russia and America doing their dick measuring contest and just swinging dicks back and forth, it goes back to that, and years of propaganda, Red Scare, commie bad, socialist is communism, and communism bad. That's where it goes back to.
It's all thanks to the Cold War.
There are people here, mostly evangelical, right-wing conservative types, who are very much against public health care, and they want it gone. They want everything privatized. Yeah. So we still have our struggles here too, and they're the attitude that they don't want to pay for somebody else's health problems. But the whole point of it is everybody pays a small amount, and then when somebody needs something major, it's easily covered, and it doesn't hurt anybody, and everybody in society has a better life for it, quality of life for it.
Yeah. What part of Canada are you in?
British Columbia. It's the westmost province.
Oh, okay.
And
I'm
Jeff.
in the Southwest.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, Kenny's right about the legacy of McCarthyism has got a lot to answer for with the United States. It really has. But also, I'll just say what Randolph's said as well. Yeah, we've got like Tory politicians. Now they won't outright just privatise the NHS, but what they've been doing, they've been chipping away at it bit by bit for a long time.
And they're going to slowly sell the NHS off to American companies because we have the infrastructure to mass produce medicine and tax people for it. And that's what's slowly going to happen to your country.
Yeah, well,
yeah,
that's why that TTIP thing was such a bad thing for us to get involved with. Because
even right now, there are certain companies that I know of that are getting ready to go over to the UK.
Well, the point Harmonica Man makes, the problem with the US is that we think healthcare has to cost that much. And yeah, if we had a centralized universal system for everyone, it cuts the cost to everyone.
I'll tell you a problem now. When a nation that puts gun ownership as a bigger human right than healthcare needs to sort its fucking priorities out.
Yeah,
agreed.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's totally right on.
Second Amendment, right?
I sometimes think the Bill of Rights is almost a noose around your head in the US.
Wow.
Because
we have a Bill of Rights here in Canada, and then what happened is in 1982 we got our Charter of Rights and Freedoms that became enshrined within our national constitution, and a few things like property ownership didn't make it into our charter, but when issues, what a lot of people don't realize, the Bill of Rights here still is applicable. So the things that our charter doesn't address, judges will very often refer to the Bill of Rights to find resolution. So it's still valid and still in place, which is kind of neat.
Yeah, I mean, everything, all of the amendments have like laws putting parameters on them. So, I mean, it's only as much of a hindrance as, the NRA is willing to allow it to be.
Yeah. Now hear that language. It's what the NRA will allow it to be.
Isn't the NRA bankrupt now?
The NRA is not.
I mean,
the problem is our politicians are for sale, and it's known.
100%.
And it's
apparently, Jen. Apparently, the NRA has pulled this bankruptcy stunt a couple of times before, though.
It's a fundraising exercise. Hey, they're doing a Trump.
A corporation or organization declaring bankruptcy is pretty much just a way to get out of a lot of their debts and reorganize things. It doesn't in any way dissolve the group.
Absolutely. No, yeah, and the chapter that it filed under does exactly that. It just, we don't want to pay this anymore. That's the chapter it filed under. It doesn't. It's not breaking down the NRA, which would be it's either 7 or 11, and like. One dissolves the business and the other one is just like, we're not paying you.
Can I do that? Be like, I'm not going to pay you for a year.
Yeah, no. No, not even a year. Like a person can do that. We're going to have way more restrictions on us not being billionaires.
Yeah, of course.
In the NRA, but yeah, people can do it too.
Yeah, people do personal bankruptcies, and in fact, some people have gamed the system repeatedly of running up a lot of debt and then claiming bankruptcy. And then a year or two later, getting a bunch of more new credit and doing it all over again. And there have been cases of people who have done this like 7 times.
Oh, like our former president.
Yeah. I was thinking that.
I think everyone was thinking that.
Here's the thing. Like, the NRA, it started with noble goals and noble intentions. It was a gun club. It was teaching gun safety to youth, and, it was a social thing. The problem is the NRA no longer serves gun owners, but gun manufacturers, which is why they drum up all of that fear of, the damn dirty liberals are going to take your guns, because it drives up gun sales.
Yeah. Well, I think to really get somewhere, we need to start with saying,
well,
okay, we're not talking about hunting rifles. Now can we discuss gun regulation?
I'm going to say I don't know that they necessarily did start all that nobly, because they actually would lobby for one of the first bit of actual gun control legislation, but that control seemed to apply to people with a certain skin tone.
Yeah, no, the NRA, they showed their colors when Philando Castile was shot dead by that police officer, when they went fucking calm blackout for like a week after that, when he was a licensed gun owner that did everything right and was killed anyway, when they're constantly saying, oh, you know, we gotta protect gun owners, you know, law-abiding citizens, like that's what we're there for. And then here is a law-abiding citizen doing everything right, but because he wasn't the right fucking color, just nothing.
Well, I mean, it wasn't 100% nothing. They talked about it in their circles. It wasn't public. You didn't have Dana Loesch or whatever doing commercials on it. But I did talk to a couple of conservatives that I know, and they said that they did mention it. It just wasn't broadcast. It wasn't like, you know, after Columbine. There's also the shooting of the senator. I forget her name, and then also
Gabby Gifford.
Gifford, yeah, and then again with the last one at the high school in Florida, which
was that
Marjorie
Parkland?
Stoneman Douglas.
Stoneman Douglas.
It was Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School.
That one.
Here in Florida, yeah.
So yeah, they were very vocal after all of those. They're actually pretty vocal during the Obama and the bump stock thing, which I thought was weird, but
Fast and
because
Furious.
that's an easy thing to cave on, rather than caving on magazine sizes or assault weapons bans. Bump stock were an easy gimme.
Yeah.
Right. They were pretty vocal on that, but not like after, you know, when they were Gabby Gifford. That was crazy. I thought they were really going to do something substantive, and they just pump more money into them, and they were like, amnesia, you know, thoughts and prayers, too soon.
You should have known they weren't going to do anything after Sandy, when they didn't do anything after Sandy Hook, when it was literal small children that were slaughtered, and they did fuck all.
They tried to outlaw the gun, and they still have not outlawed the Bushmaster. Yeah. If you live in a certain state, you can go buy one right now if you live in a certain state.
A certain state.
We had
well, not here. You couldn't buy one here.
In the UK, I think it was 1996, we had like our only mass school shooting when it was with really small children. There was immediate crackdown on handguns after that.
Yeah, well, we had a similar thing after after the Port Arthur massacre in Australia.
The problem in America is that guns are
amazing. I was so proud of Australia.
And New Zealand, like last year as well. After that, what happened?
Yeah,
they actually took steps to try and make sure that this doesn't happen again.
We still made fun of it though, even though we all agreed with it as a country. I mean, at the time I was part of a radio comedy show called Behind the Fridge, and we did a comedy skit about buying back semi-automatic washing machines and twin tubs. That was all about the buyback of guns at the time. It was very, very topical. That doesn't fit anymore. It's something that hasn't stood the test of time. But at the time, it was incredibly topical. So, well, even though we as Australians were very, very, very happy to have stricter gun laws because we didn't want to have this thing happen again, we took the piss out of ourselves for it too. We were very, very happy to be self-deprecating over it. I think it was partly a coping mechanism for us as a country, but it was also the fact that we're very aware that we're fragile and stupid, and we do stupid things, and we need to protect our society.
No, yeah, and we're not even there yet. We're just asking for stricter backgrounds.
Yeah,
that's all we're asking for. That's all we're asking for right now. And they're like,
I can't imagine your government doing a gun buyback scheme.
No, that's not going to happen.
Either of them, either side.
Guns are institutionalized here. Like every citizen, every other person has a firearm.
Yeah,
Or
whereas in Australia, I mean, as we'll know, it's not our culture at all.
Yeah, exactly.
It is. We don't. You know what? We think it's odd that if you've got a friend who, for some reason, has a firearm and they're not a farmer or something, or somebody who actually has a job where they may actually need a firearm, you're like, why the hell have you got a gun? You know, that is a typical Aussie response. Why have you got a bloody gun? What do you need a gun for?
Well,
you know,
the sad thing is, I have opposite conversations where they're like, "Why don't you, own a firearm?"
Yeah, it's like,
and
it's
kind of
sad.
on what Jen was saying before about the Constitution being a hindrance. It's like the Constitution mentions guns, so we're having a problem regulating them. It doesn't mention cars. So we didn't have any problem passing requirements for that.
It's the same old argument, though, because in the Constitution, I don't think they were thinking that we'd have automatic weapons.
They definitely weren't.
But I just mean
they were
as
talking
far
about
as
muskets.
putting any reasonable legislation for them. That why can't we at least require people to have the same thing to own a gun as they do to drive a car? That they have to take a test to prove they can handle it safely. They have to have a license, and they have to have insurance in case it injures someone.
Well, it was also written at a time where it was important for states to form militias because there wasn't a national military to protect the country.
Yeah.
So, which is all irrelevant now because we have national communications, we have worldwide communications, and you don't need to have militias.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a yeah. I mean, the
should have been
Second
reformed
Amendment.
at that time, but it wasn't because a lot of people were still using guns to game and live off the land. We're way past due, and now they've said that it's impossible to bribe them. So Nathaniel's in the chat, and he was saying pretty much what we need to do, and that's get Citizens United struck down.
Yeah,
and that's step number one. We can't move any further on a lot of issues without that.
Yeah, I agree. I might have to start winding this up. This has been an absolutely awesome conversation, and there's been little tidbits of this conversation I would like to have again as their own conversation. For example, gun control.
Absolutely, that's a.
And I would dearly love to organise with you, Kitty, and everyone's names have got messed up. Thank you very much, StreamYard.
What was the main topic again?
We didn't. I don't even know that we properly covered that at all. But
being a non-believer, we did discuss it a bit. Why we were non-believers.
I don't have a reason why. I just am.
Yeah.
I always have been an atheist.
But Jen, when you have the gun control one, I'd definitely be on for that. Like, I mean, I may be a liberal, but I actually am a gun owner.
I would dearly love to have that discussion, and even have some people who are pro-guns have that discussion, because I think it's a discussion worth having. I'd also like to go further into the discussion that we got into, which I don't even know how we got to, about coping with abusive relationships. I think that's a discussion that's worth having.
That was profound. That was important.
That was incredibly profound, and I'd like to go into that a bit deeper. If you're up to that, Kitty. I think it'd be a good therapy for me to have that conversation. But I think it's a good conversation that we need to have. And there's a few people out there in the community who have been hurt in relationships, or know people who are hurt in relationships, like parents and that. And I think it's a conversation that needs to be had, and a conversation that we need to have about how we can protect and discuss ourselves. So there's a couple of things from this.
It took a while for me to be able to talk about it, and even while I was talking, my heart was racing, and I had to take a minute to just kind of. But absolutely. I can talk about it, and not everybody can. It's trauma and abuse that people go through. Some people can't bring themselves to talk about it, and I feel like because I can, I almost have a responsibility for those that can't voice it themselves, because so much of this goes on behind the scenes, in hushed whispers, that it's not really talked about. It was a female family member who is evangelical that told me that if I was essentially a better wife, that I wouldn't be getting abused.
And that's what we need to talk about. We need to talk about those toxic ideas in society that limit us as women in relationships, and men get limited in these relationships too. But
I've I spoke out against and pushed back against someone a little while ago publicly for engaging in sexual harassment and laughing about it because I'm against it. And what I found really interesting about it was, like, what stood out the most to me was that over 24 people contacted me privately to thank me for it and tell me that they are really glad to see other people speak out against it because they're not in a position where they feel that they're comfortable enough or confident enough to speak out on it themselves.
Yeah.
So I think that would be a very good part of the conversation to include because I think it is hard for a lot of people, and it made it clear to me that this is a very important thing to do, to speak out against this stuff.
Yeah, totally agree.
Absolutely, 1,000% agree. I mean, not all survivors, not all victims can vocalize, and those that can absolutely should. I can't even tell you the number of times I walked out on a job because I was propositioned with, I'll give you a raise if you have sex with me, or they touched me inappropriately. Like, I mean, I have had some really shit luck when it comes to dealing with creepy sexual harassment, with sexual assault, and with, you know, domestic abuse. So, like, I've got the trifecta there. So, like, I got a lot of baggage and trauma I could unload on your channel, Jen.
Yeah, it's not you.
That's what I think we need to do.
You, it's them. They are the problem.
We need to normalize the discussion somewhat.
But it's not your bad luck. It's them. They're the problem, is what I'm saying.
We need to be able to normalize the discussion so that those who are still stuck in bad situations can feel like they can reach out and talk to people, and that there is a way through this. Because, I mean, I've been some of where you've been, Kitty. I don't know that my situation was as bad as yours, but it was bad. I mean, when you're being emotionally abused and put down and held back and then controlled within a relationship, I think there is an enormous amount of parallels in that. I don't know. Without us actually talking about it, I don't know how similar it is. A lot of what you said resonated very deeply with me because it was the same sort of thing. And I have talked about mine as well in other streams. But
there are also people
a discussion we need to have
in any kind of abuse situation who will speak out against it. That's important to know, because I think a lot of people probably don't realize that, and they're always surprised because they always seem surprised. Oh, you've never experienced this, speaking out against it. That's great. So
you need to. We need to normalize being able to speak out about domestic violence.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yep. Just time and a place. Just let me know, Jen, and I'll be there.
Don't worry, this is definitely a happening thing, as with the gun one. And I think there's a couple of other things that came out of this. This discussion has been amazing, and there's a couple of things that we touched on in this discussion that I think need deeper talks, and maybe focusing on it rather than letting the conversation run. Because I always intended on letting this conversation run because it was going to be that sort of thing. So while we had a topic to start with, it was never going to be tied to it.
Maybe we'll try again.
Well, we could try again. This was mostly me. This was mostly me surviving with having spent most of the weekend with a raging headache. So.
Yeah, I'm so glad you're doing better. Like, you seem normal,
I'm
bubbly.
fine. The only reason you can't see the bruise is because I've got a lot of makeup on my.
Speaking of makeup, like, this highlighter right here is on point.
It is.
It's gorgeous. On and like, fuck yeah.
Oh, your makeup looks awesome, Kitty.
This lipstick shade, it's called Protector. So.
I love your lipsticks because they hold so well. So I'm gonna have to.
I mean, when I ate something a little greasy, like fat will break it down. So that's why I had to reapply partway through the stream. But I got my makeup bag here. Oof, it's heavy. But
I've got a makeup drawer.
Yeah, well, I keep it with me, but this is actually it. It's the Maybelline Superstay Matte. Like, all right, maybe if I turn one of these lights off, you can see it better. But yeah,
he's a shill for
it's Maybelline. People, we'll have a makeup. We will have a makeup stream at some point, Kitty, and we'll have a talk about makeup.
Now I got the old school
You're
commercial.
talking my language, girl.
Yeah,
but
maybe it's Maybelline.
But yeah, and there my son turned.
Put
it
her full
off,
screen so we can see this.
I'm trying to get it to not be so shiny. But yeah, it's the Maybelline Superstay. This is the shade Protector. It's the one I'm actually wearing right now.
Yeah.
But,
I unfortunately can't make Kitty full stream on the stream, but
purples to
Kitty. Kitty, it's okay. If there's a bunch of men here, it's totally fine.
Yeah, we will have a girls' night where we go makeup.
Hey, stop being
That
sexist,
sounds
Maya.
fun.
I know. I just haven't seen my shade
A
yet.
girls' and non-binary night. Sorry, sir. I
Yeah, well,
apologize.
I get
And there are
involved in
some
the
guys who
girls'
like
night,
makeup
guys,
too.
so
So
you're all good.
yeah,
So
I'm
does,
being incredibly sexist.
I'm gonna say people have seen my avatar, right? You know, just saying. Makeup.
Does
I'm gonna have to do
anyone
lovely
awesome
shade.
goth makeup one night.
does anyone have anything to shill?
Yes. Randolph?
Okay, well, I'm with the Canadian Atheists. You can find out more at www.canadianatheists.ca. One of our goals is to normalize atheism in society so that when people tell others they don't believe in a deity, they get the exact same reaction that theists do, not including shock and surprise and concern.
Awesome.
Thank you very much.
No worries. Matt, because you're probably the one who has to go first.
Yeah, I don't know how I lasted this long. I'm going to be here
Yeah,
later.
you
anyways,
lasted.
so-
We're glad you did because it was fun having you.
Thanks. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I have a little YouTube channel as well as a Twitter account that I use to kind of promote the YouTube channel, and I just generally talk about just science on that. So, but I try and make it more interesting. So if you want to know whether submarines fly or the time that America tried to make a space-based X-ray nuke-powered laser,
Lasers on sharks.
you know exactly where to go.
Awesome.
Yes, I have done that as
Lasers
well.
on sharks. Go watch Matt's videos. Anyone who's in the chat now not subscribed to Matt, go. His link's in the description. Go subscribe. Matt does absolutely brilliant science content
Thanks.
videos.
Yeah, my
He's
latest
amazing.
video needs a bit of love. It's got like 10 times as few views as my other one.
Aw.
So
You've got to.
I think
You've
that
gotta
was
go-
my bad though. I added at a bad time.
I'll say you've got to go back and watch his one on the Bond gadgets as well.
Oh, Bond gadgets.
Oh,
Yeah.
that sounds good.
My next
More
one
of
will be
those.
on the cars. Next
Yeah.
one will be on Bond cars for my next video. So hopefully it's as good.
So,
All right, well, thanks for that. Thanks for the shout out, Jen.
no worries. Sam.
I was supposed to be releasing a video today, but it was a low spoons day, so I didn't finish editing. So hopefully tomorrow.
All right, cool. So keep an eye out for that. Sam's link is in the description. Junie, I'm not sure if I put Junie's link in the description. No, I think I have got Junie's link in the description. It is. Everyone's link will end up in the description. Junie, what have you got coming up? Junie? All right, we'll come back to Junie. Jeff.
I've got everything scheduled as such. Next Sunday I'll be doing the Asterix stream with Noodle on my channel. I'll say the one we did a little earlier, like yesterday, was actually a lot more controversial than most of the ones we do, because it seems like some of the stuff you've been talking about, we were talking about in this.
Yeah.
But I did come up. It'll probably be Thursday, sometime in the afternoon UK time. I'll try and figure out time. You know, I've been done a couple of streams where we've been looking through certain people's Twitter accounts and reacting.
Oh, I've been loving those. I've got to try and make it to one of them so they can be part of the discussion.
They are very fun.
We've done Greg Locks, we've done Kevin Sorbos. Unfortunately, I can't do SJ now.
You could if you you go and have a talk to Florida Line.
Yeah. But however, someone did suggest to me, have you seen the Transformed Wife's Twitter? And I'm like,
oh, that's top.
I think that might be. I think that might be the next one. We go through the Transformed Wife's Twitter, so you don't have to.
Oh, that sounds like fun.
Yikes.
That'll probably be Thursday. I'm going to try and figure out a time for it yet, so.
Awesome. Purple?
Yeah, I just mostly do casual chats, Wednesdays at noon and Thursdays at midnight Central Time. And, until I get my new computer going, I won't be doing anything else, really.
Awesome.
Cool.
I'll be there if I can.
Maya?
I don't do shit.
You appear on lots of people's channels, though, so keep an eye out, because Maya's always around, and she's lovely.
No, yeah, you find me usually drinking and talking shit in the chat, and
Awesome.
fact checking when I can.
We love
She's
you,
in
man.
the chat a lot.
Yeah.
See her there all the time.
And,
A lot of different videos.
and last but
'Cause I'm
not
in
least,
the
seeing as
chat
how
too when I
we've
see her.
lost Junie, Kitty, what have you got happening?
Okay, so a couple of things. On Wednesday, I should be on with Godless Granny at 7 p.m. Central.
Yeah, I think I'm doing that too.
I
think I am too.
Johan Roderick just started a new channel called Bragging Rights, and I will be appearing as a guest co-host on that. I'm not sure what day it's new, so he's still working out the schedule, but I will be showing up for streams on that.
Follow Kitty on Twitter so you know when she's on things.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yep.
And also I'm gonna shill for Junie because she just put out a video that is near and dear to my heart last night about mask wearing, and it was fan-fucking-tastic, and everybody should go watch it. Subscribe. Same thing with Godless Granny. I will share a link on my Twitter to the Bragging Rights YouTube channel, so if any of you guys are willing, there'll be days like nerdy trivia days, or basically nerd fights, and it should be up everybody's alley here because we're all kind of nerdy. So I'll share that on my Twitter, so go look for that there. And other than that, please wear a mask, socially distance, wash your hands, don't be a dick. It's kind of my sign off.
Yeah, it's always your sign off. It's a good sign off. Don't be a dick is a mantra everyone should live by.
Absolutely.
It really is. The world would be such a better place if everybody lived by that.
I had forgotten that just before I came into this, Godless Granny asked me to be on that show as well.
So a lot of this panel are actually going to be on that show.
It looks like the panel's already here.
Well, when you keep good company, that company just kind of goes to different places. But I'm still shilling my GG, my awesome GG mug.
That's awesome.
All right. Well, we know where you're going to be, babe. You're going to be on Godless Grannies
on Wednesday, and next Thursday we're going to have the WTF stream, and we'll figure out the topic.
I think maybe we might cover the guns for that.
Awesome.
I'm thinking talking gun control for the What the Fuck show is actually that's a good forum for it, and
that's
I think
another
we could do that.
non-controversial topic.
Yeah, another non-controversial topic for us. So I think talking about gun control for that should be good. So that will be Thursday night in the US, Friday morning Australia. So anyone on the panel who wants to be a part of that, let us know. I think you're all in the group.
Awesome.
So
awesome.
Except for maybe Maya, who I think I'll have to add to the group because I'm not sure if you're in my group on Twitter. I'll check.
Sorry, what's the panel about?
Gun control Friday.
Sorry?
Gun control.
Oh, okay. I'll probably just tune in to listen.
Yeah. So aside from that, at some point there'll be a Stump Gen over the next week. I'm not sure when I'm going to do it, but I may go for a morning one my time, so that's evening time, and might see if I can hit Matt up at some point to top on if he's not too busy this week. It's always fun when we do a bit of science, and when maybe we can actually discuss some of that laser stuff I was talking about at the beginning when we both actually read the document.
Ooh.
I want to be there for that. I didn't know who Matt was. I had never heard of him before. So, now I have a whole back catalog of shit to go watch.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's a couple
if you get Jen, Matt, and Chad in a room, That's always
It's always fun.
That just sounds like, the start of a kinky joke, but you gotta have the will in there for that.
Ooh.
Mm.
That's all I have to say.
We love
All
you,
right,
Kitty.
so
Wait,
yeah,
wait.
let's not get
I
everybody
have-
in trouble.
There we go.
Oh, I love it. Okay. Thank you all for joining us. It's been absolutely awesome. Brilliant discussion, this one. And thank you to everybody in the chat who's been along for the whole ride, because I know a few people have been here for the whole nearly 3 hours we've been at this one.
Absolutely.
Thank you all so much. Have a great evening. Have a great week, and we'll see you again very soon. Bye.
Bye.
See you later.